And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Attention, roll call.
That's right, bright and early, 8:05 live Eastern Time. Good morning, everybody. And, of course, 5:05 Pacific Coast. It's still dark outside, bright and early, starting to get warm. It's a good time right now. We're mid-April, that mid-spring season. I know New York's been kind of upside down. Some days it's cold. Some days it's been warming up. But, hey, things are brightening up. Paperboy Prince, New York City mayoral candidate. He should be coming on today. There's some scheduling issues, so we plan for him to come on. If he doesn't, we'll have him on another day. With that being said, there's still a lot going on. There's a lot.
He's coming. He's coming. He's just running a little late. He'll be here.
Well, we'll have him. Outstanding.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's just talk about some news that's going on. There's a lot going on. What do you think about the proposed sergeant's contract that's been surfacing around? What are your thoughts? I tell you immediately, I know people are jumping up and down, but the difference between a top paid sergeant and a top paid cop is about $4,000. I don't think that's listen, I'm glad they're coming to some type of close, but I don't think that's enough cap. What do you think?
So I'm gonna just, I'm happy the guy's got a raise, but I mean, complete failure. I mean, I think, when I look at the uni, when I watched the press conference yesterday, and everyone's giving the shout out to Kaz Daughtry, every agency's hero. Oh, he did it. I was like, yeah, he's the deputy mayor for about 4 seconds, and he solved your contract issues. Come on. I'm like, Vinny Vallalong, I'm sorry, he needs to go. He absolutely needs to go. He did a terrible job. He cost you guys thousands upon thousands of dollars in retirement. It just is. It is what it is. That raise, you really got nothing different from the original contract. So the contract should have been signed. Should have been signed ahead of time. So I mean, the whole thing is like, it was a huge waste of time, in my opinion. It was a huge waste of time. It looked to me to be the same play that the Lynch administration did, where they kept you out of contract for years and saved the city millions and millions of dollars by keeping you out of contract, settling later. That retro money is not even worth 10% of what it was if you would have earned it earlier. It's not. And anyone that says, right, you don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about compounded interest in your ITHP, in your 50%, in your deferred compensation, in your 401s. So, I mean, to me, I'm happy you guys got a raise. It's about damn time, but it's way too long. Whole thing was a debacle. I mean, I got to be honest about it.
No, that's where I'm getting at. I agree. I'm happy for the sergeants to get some type of closure, but I don't think this is a win. I think a lot of new sergeants that may not understand how the salary structure works. Some of the stuff you're talking about, I agree, but unfortunately, majority of the job is now tier 3, so that doesn't even apply to them anymore. As far as the 50% additional, the increased take-home pay, they don't have that opportunity. Hassan Mo, thank you, brother. Just want to stop real quick. Coffee and donuts. We appreciate you, the man. He says, good morning, guys. Moment of silence. Prayers for the real hero, Derek. Expecting a CD coming down for Mo. And EDM, the olive oil is great. And the Shake Box Espresso with the $5 top water. This interview with Adam, sending crumbs your way for the light bill. Hassan, you're a good man. Hassan did send me some like olive oil and some black seed oil and some charcoal incense from Saudi Arabia to help with Derek. I appreciate it. Outstanding, bro. Thank you so much. So with that being said, when we get to the contract, I think it's not a win at all. I think it's a battle. I think that the cops, that at this point, the cops that are newly promoted sergeants, the cops that have been sergeants for a period of time, they're just desperate at this point. I don't think that retro is ever a good thing. I think it's unfortunate. If you actually understand economics, you're getting today, you're getting yesterday's dollar. So you're already behind the 8 ball. For most of the time, if you're behind the 8 ball, you're going to have credit card bills building up on you. You'll be behind on your bills. And again, you get yesterday's dollar where you could have invested that money, and that money could have already grown, right? And so fortunate sometimes, I think that sometimes within the NYPD is that we don't see outside the box, and that there's other ways to funnel your money and invest, whether it's crypto, the stock market, real estate, and there are other ways to invest besides the NYPD platform, which you have. which if you're tier 2, which is 50% additional ITHP. And of course, that goes for tier 2 and tier 3, 401k and 457. That's where the majority of your investment should go, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll definitely get into that on Friday. We'll talk about the SBA contract, the settling of the Sergeants Benevolent Association. But at this time, we want to welcome to the stage 2025 mayoral candidate, Paperboy Love Prince. Paperboy, thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate you.
Paper, yeah. It's our time.
Dude, your audio is bad, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Could you lower your volume? I think I'm coming through.
Sure. Let's see.
Or do you have a headset?
How's that? Is that better?
You got a lot of reverb and there's some background noise.
You know what? I'll take off my speakers. I have my.
You know what? We're going to say, good morning, by the way. We're going to say this is part of your act. This is part of the clown act. we'll chalk it up to that.
Okay. How is it now? Can you hear me?
Terrible.
You sound like a robot.
Oh, man. Okay. You know what?
Can you jump out? Jump back in? Let's see if that clears it up.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys.
Hey, listen, you must be using my stalling.
Listen, he has some great videos. If any of you guys ever go to his YouTube channel, he does some great production, So, absolutely. But so all right, while he's doing that, let's just what do you think about though the credit Kaz Daughtry was given yesterday at the press conference? And I literally got message after message saying, "Oh, you guys should give Kaz Daughtry a shout out for settling the contract." I'm like, what are you like? Anyone could just tell you anything and you believe it. It's like, oh yeah, Kaz Daughtry has been the deputy mayor for 3 seconds. What does he have to do with the negotiation process between the SBA and the New York City that's been going on for almost 4 years? Like, what the hell is he? How is he getting involved to understand the minutia of that contract? It's like you don't see the political run that's being set up for him, for Jessica Tisch. It's it's laughable to me. All right, hold on. I'm gonna bring Paperboy back up.
But while Paperboy comes on,
how are we doing?
How we doing?
Check. How's this?
Outstanding.
Oh, you're good, brother.
You know what, Paperboy? I think you did that on purpose.
All right, let's welcome to the stage, Paperboy Prince.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. So happy to be here. Maybe that was they didn't want us to have this conversation, so they had some type of mic issues going on. But happy to be here, and good morning.
That's what it is. Hey, welcome, Paperboy Prince. I think you know it already. We think that you have the best ad campaign going. Paperboy Prince running for New York City Mayor 2025 at this time. You're an interesting character. You want to spread love. I know that you also actually put your name in the hat for president for 2024. You've run before for different seats. And you also have this platform where you talk a lot about love. So, I mean, there's so much to go on here. Let's get right into that. So I know you wanted to talk about your public safety platform. And I think what's great about it is I don't agree with it. You want to defund the police, but I respect it. You've been honest about it. You don't hide from it. You don't try to reshape it with different verbiage. So from what I know, you want to defund the police and remove a lot of funding for the police and create this love team. So if you do make mayor for New York City, what kind of security detail would you have if you have a love team?
So, thank you for having me. And I do want to talk about my platform, but it's dope to get right into this portion, the love team, because it's one of my, I think, most ambitious policies, and also something that I rarely get to talk about in detail with folks that have experience on the street in New York City. So I mentioned before I was super excited to talk about that. I was never so much a defund the police person as I was a abolish the police person. And I want to explain what that means. As basically the idea is that the police become super necessary in a society when there's a you know, widening gap between the folks that have and have not. And that's something that has been going on for a long time. You know, there's a big disparity between rich and poor. We see it right now in New York City. We have some of the richest people on the planet and also some of the poorest people on the planet. So, so yeah, the idea behind the love team isn't saying that the police aren't important or don't provide a super important role to our society right now, or that we could even do this realistically soon, right? It's not something that tomorrow we could shut the lights off and do something like that. That's not what it is. It's an idea for the future, which is a part of my plan, which is the utopia plan, right? Like, how can we turn this city into a utopia? So, not thinking about so much where we are right now, but where we can go. And the idea behind it is we need to spread love. Folks need love more than ever. And right now, we've gotten so focused on just basically arrests and what's the word, quotas, instead of actually helping people. And I think one of the biggest problems here is why I even said abolish, is because the relationship between the community and the police department, I feel like that relationship is damaged beyond repair in certain communities. And the work that falls on the police department, it's too much work. I personally feel like there's so much work that the police department does that shouldn't be police work. You know, a lot of the calls that are folks that are mentally disturbed, or calls that are where someone just needs a report taken, the guys with the guns maybe shouldn't show up to that. You know, there's a lot more serious issues that they should be reserved for, but a lot of the issues, you know, shouldn't be on the cops' plate. So that's kind of the idea of where the emphasis for the love team came from. And then the second part of it is positive reinforcement, right? I watched one of you all's episodes where you talked about someone being basically wanting to go to jail one night, you know, because they were like, okay, can I break into a car? What can I do to just get some help and go to jail, have a safe, warm place to sleep where I can get some food and all of that, right? So the idea is right now, if you do something negative, we have something for you to take care of you. If you do something negative, you're going to get arrested. If you do something negative, you can you know, go to jail or have a record. But if you do something positive, there's no positive reinforcement for that. This is something that I said on the Daily Show with what's this guy's name? Trevor Noah, when he was on, was one of the ideas is a love ticket, right? So if you burn a red light or are texting while driving, you can get a ticket, right? Well, that's negative reinforcement to tell folks to not do that. What about having some positive reinforcement? Like, hey, if you're helping somebody, you know, an elderly person across the street, or if you see that there's litter on the ground or something like that, having the ability to get a ticket, say, hey, whoa, you're picking up litter. Whoa, you're helping an elderly person across the street. Here's a ticket, a love ticket for $75 for doing something that helps our community, right? And so for me, my idea was, we have so much negative reinforcement right now. What about some opportunities for positive reinforcement that allow folks to be a part of the community that's actually helping it out, changing it, and all of that. So that's something that was I was inspired by. And you know, the police are the most on the ground that we have in our government. So having them to have the ability to also be able to dole out some positive reinforcement too, would give more connection to the community. Another thing I'll say before you all jump in is, one of the most important things I think that we could have, and this is why I came up with the love team, is community connection, right? If we can bring folks together and have more community connection. And right now we judge a lot of cops on their how many arrests, how many collars they have, right? Instead of wait, why aren't the why isn't the leadership in the NYPD saying, "Hey, everybody, just go out today and just shake as many hands as you can. Go out and who can shake 100 hands today or 150 hands today and just meet people, talk to them." There'll be so many people. I know this as for somebody who is a been running for office and a politician, community leader for a long time. Everywhere I go, folks tell me about public safety issues that are happening. I mean, the last event I went to, a lady pulled me to the side. She was the head of her um, NYCHA building, and she said, "Hey, there's this mentally disturbed man. His sister put him out. He has an ID that says he lives in this building, but every time we see him out, he exposes himself to myself, to young children, and there's nothing that the cops can really do because he lives there. When they see something, they'll take him away, but he'll be right back the next day, right?" So and this comes from just talking to people and shaking their hands, and so many people actually do want the cops and need the police to be there. And so I feel like having a division and arm that can go and just shake as many hands as possible, have as many coffees, teas with people as possible, and really understand their needs and what's going on in this way would be a big step forward to the future. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I appreciate you talking about positive reinforcement and your ideology. But if you could just get to that part, I really appreciate it. So, which is great, and you explained that you're not looking to abolish the police, and you kind of want to restructure it and move some of the money around. I do believe that's defunding. But what about as far as not just positive reinforcement, but if you are mayor tomorrow, your life is important. In order to have positive reinforcement, we need you to be safe. Would you have the cops with guns, part of a security detail, to keep you safe? Or would you have some type of love team where you would have men without guns? I mean, what is your perspective to keep yourself safe? Because Eric Adams said he wouldn't need a security detail if New York City is safe.
So I actually, for me personally, if there's some type of ordinance that forces me to, I would to follow the law. But me personally, I wouldn't. I don't know if you all know, but I've been heavily attacked since 2019 and running for office. I've been attacked. I have a pretty good relationship with the local precinct. I have a gallery where we do a lot of it's called the Paperboy Prince Love Gallery in Bushwick, Brooklyn, where we do a lot of food giveaways. We've given away a lot of technology, computers, phones, a lot of clothes. We've had hundreds of community events, given away literally millions of dollars of food. And with that, there's been come a lot of attention. And, my store has been broken into about 5 or 6 times. I have a bus that's been broken into several times. And, there have been folks that have gotten mentally ill and have come to attack me. For all different types of reasons. I could go on and tell you all the reasons that folks literally have mental breakdowns. And because I'm someone known in the community, they'll come after me. So I've had violent folks that were disturbed come after me several times. And obviously the mayor has even more pressure than that. But for me, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't. And I feel like there's so many other more important places for the police department to be. And I would focus on having a love team, folks that could spread love, talk to people. And yeah, obviously if there was a situation where it was a dangerous situation, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police, as I've done in the past when there's been a dangerous situation at my gallery. But yeah, the idea is figuring out a world, and you said that you believe that is defunding, but to go a little deeper, where I feel like it's different is I actually am the only candidate that's talked about for years wanting to expand training for the NYPD. So which would be more money and likely more funding or readjusted the funding. I feel like having at least 2.5 years of academy training will go a long way. I know they recently lowered the college credits needed to be a police officer to kind of, see an uptick in recruitment. And I think that having a longer academy time would actually result in less complaints, more understanding for the new cops and the rookies, better training, folks even having more pride in their job and feeling more confident in stressful situations. So yeah, that's something that I feel like would be important. And then right now, I've even seen today, you guys have talked about the leadership of the department and how folks are losing faith in the leadership. And I feel like with something with like a love team, which many of folks that are already police officers now would have the potential to be on the love team. Like a team ran by me, a love team ran by me would have so much energy, so much passion, so much excitement. Something that you would be excited to do and feel more proud of, and something that would be on the cutting edge of public safety, something that is kind of like a new wave and a new vision. And yeah, so that's kind of the idea behind that.
So I'll totally agree with you that the system's broken, like 100%. I think money goes to the wrong places. I think, targeting people to go get arrests and summonses is the exact wrong thing. But right now, as it sits, everyone I know believes that public safety is the number one issue in New York City. And then to hone in on it a little further, they say mental illness and homelessness is the biggest problem New York City's facing, which is creating this public safety situation. I think my opinion of when I look at the last 30 years, particularly if we hone in on the de Blasio and now the Adams administration, you see mentally ill homeless people on the streets of New York City. Do you have a plan to deal with the mentally ill and homeless?
Yes. So basically, when I first spoke about, the police department having too many jobs right now, they gave the NYPD the impossible task of dealing with people with serious mental health issues that doctors with decades of experience still have difficulty actually diagnosing and treating correctly. So I think that it can't be overstated that it is a tough, tough, tough job and an impossible task to have to deal with this. So that's why I feel like pairing especially for these calls that are, an emotionally disturbed person or someone who's mentally ill, making sure to have some type of qualified psychologist or someone who can accurately diagnose and in real time deal with the mentally disturbed person. So a qualified professional. And I think having each precinct to have maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 of these people that can go out on these calls specifically, that are reserved to go out on these calls specifically, and they have the guys with guns as backup, right? If something goes left or something like that, but these people are prepared. They know how to deal with folks on the street and how to properly address mental health. This is something that hasn't gone on yet. And right now, like I said, we send folks in with who are well intentioned. I think that no cop goes to a call and says, no cop goes into a call and says, hey, I don't want to handle this call correctly, right? Everybody goes in well intentioned. The issues is that we don't give them the skills, and they're dealing with people that everybody else in the city is trying to get away from these people. And these are we have the cops that we're sending in. So I really think having a qualified psychologist, some type of mental health professional that is on the call with the cops in real time and able to advise and also have authority. And then, if things get violent or take a left turn, that the officers could come and step in and subdue the individual if needed. But I really think we have to have more creative approaches, because you're right. The mental health crisis has worsened in a real way. And there hasn't been, basically, it's easy to send the cops in and blame them. They become an easy punching bag for anyone. And I see this for folks who run for office for the first time, or folks who are activists and are getting their first chance to speak, it's easy to use the cops as a punching bag. There are mistakes that are made, but it's also like, they have a job where they're in a position that it makes it easy to be the punching bag. So when you actually break down the problem, it's more so the leadership and the politicians that put folks in these positions that should be more the punching bag than the everyday cop. So yeah, so that's kind of my focus, is having some type of qualified professional that's there all the time, because probably more than any other NYC mayoral candidate ever that has reached this level, I've have more experience on the streets, having real interactions with police as someone that have had calls on. I street perform, so I've done over 150 shows as a street performer over the last decade, and an artist, and also have a business. So have had so many situations where the cops have been either called on me, or I've had to call the cops, or something like this. And I've seen real situations on the street, stuff escalate, whether it's on a basketball court, at a party, or some type of event. So I see how these things go, and I see how young people react to them. And a big problem with the politicians of today is it's been so long since they've actually been in the streets, in the community, in a real way, not surrounded by an armed detail. It's been a long time. I actually had to be out there being Paperboy Prince and talk to people and meet people and see folks going through issues and how they hash it out and deal with it. So that's where my kind of thought for this come from. But I'm curious, you all's perspective as folks who have actually, been on the street for a number of years. What would you think about having some type of qualified mental health professional there on calls that are specifically with mentally ill, emotionally disturbed persons and things of that nature?
I think that's a great question. We actually have something in place now, right? You have Kendra's law, you have the mental hygiene law, where you can have a clinician on scene when you're actually involuntary moving someone who's emotionally disturbed. So we do have those types of things in place. I do, unfortunately, I respect your passion, and I respect the positivity, right? We want the world to be a better place, but unfortunately, when you see the things that John and myself have seen, that small percentage, but that was our world doing policing, and these emotionally disturbed calls can turn from just someone who's having a bad day, and it could become someone's violent nightmare. Just these things just turn in a second, and I do, unfortunately, think that we need the police there, because we don't have a crystal ball, and we don't know where these things are going to go. So I just want to ask you, right, because I know that you grew up in Maryland, and now you're a lifelong New Yorker, and you love New York, and you're running for mayor. You've said in the past, when it comes to the NYPD, that you believe that New York City police officers should have to reside in the 5 boroughs. And when we talk about the cost of things, I know you talk a lot about cost in New York City, especially you talk a lot about housing, you talk about universal base income, and we know the salaries for New York City police officers, even with overtime, and the amount of contributions they have to pay with taxes, it's just rough. But here you are, grew up in Maryland, and now you're running for New York City mayor. Why would you feel that a New York City police officer should have to reside in New York City? There's plenty of viable candidates from outside the city that want to be a New York City police officer. They just don't want to reside in New York City because of the cost, or maybe they don't have any family ties in New York City. So does that still remain your position? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. So to give you a bit of my background, my family has been here for a long time, over 100 years. And in the 60s, my grandfather and grandmother started a church that's near where I am right now in Bed-Stuy, and that is still existing today over near Atlantic City, called Atlantic Avenue, called the Elam International Fellowship Church, that's been around for a long time, is still there. They named the street there after him. And when my mom went to college, she moved to Washington, D.C., and that's where she met my dad. And so my family has been from New York a long time, and including my time living there when they were in school, and my time there, also had a chance to grow up and spend a lot of time here. And then I eventually went to college in Maryland. I went to college at University of Maryland, College Park, which, funny enough, is where some of the most federal agents are recruited from. So a lot of FBI, CIA guys, folks that I went to school with, are in these positions now because it's so close to DC. So that's where it comes from. And growing up in DC for some period of my life kind of gave me a good handle on the political spectrum and getting involved in all of that. So that's kind of where some of my background comes from, just to share that with your audience. But as far as having folks live in the 5 boroughs, the idea is this, right? We have to know our community. And I know that you're familiar that a lot of folks can feel like the NYPD is while well-intentioned and while folks really care, people inside the community can feel like it's a occupying force coming in outside of their community, right? Because, like I said, there hasn't been that level of connection. So the idea behind this is, hey, if you're actually living in the community, from the community, it would be that much better at connecting with the community, right? So yeah, so that's my thought on that. I don't have a personal excuse me. I personally don't have a issue with folks from outside the city being a cop, right? We need honestly more folks on the force. So I don't have a issue with that. It's that, again, like I said, in my utopia plan, in a best case scenario issue, it would be someone that is in your neighborhood, in your block, that knows everyone around, that knows the teens. I mean, imagine how much better of a connection it would be if it's someone that folks know and have grown up with and have experienced. There would just be a better connection and a more, I think, loving approach to what's being done. Because right now, what can happen is, and again, I think folks have good intentions, but what can happen is when you're not in a community or from a community, it's harder to understand what someone's going through. And you realize that one interaction with the police can potentially ruin someone's life, and folks make mistakes. I know a lot of folks, there's a lot of cops that will let somebody off, say, hey, I'll give you a warning this time, but don't do it again, right? There's a lot of cops who will do that. And I honestly say, from my experience in living in other places, New York City cops happen to be some of the coolest cops, right? Like they end up, no, I'm just saying, really, like, as an artist, I've got a chance to, when I, was signed to a label and working with Azalea Banks, we toured over 30 cities together. I lived in Spain for 2 years, so I've had a chance to see cops in other countries. I just was in Africa, in South Africa, a couple months ago. So I've gotten a pretty good view of what how different cities, countries deal with these things. And I got to say, New York City cops can be some of the most personable, understanding, fun, talking. Again, I've as a street performer, I'm someone who has been out on Myrtle Avenue performing, and the cops will see me and they'll stop and say, hey, Paperboy, we see you doing your thing. Or they'll come over the mic and say, yeah, they'll join in the song. And I think that these type of interactions come from knowing each other, knowing the community, knowing the people in the community, and having that close connection. And the idea of this is, right now, with a lot of the politicians, and I can just go through and name them, their job is division, right? They want to divide us. They want to say, if you're Black, you should be on this side. If you're white, you should be on this side. If you're old, you should be on this side. If you're young, you should be on this side. Cop, you should be on this side. If you're a citizen, you should be on this side, right? And for me, my goal, honestly, and I'm working on it every day, is unity, bringing us together, right? It's not saying try to condemn people and try to cast people out. It's actually saying, how can we bring more of us together and find solutions by coming together as a community? So the idea would be yes, there might be some type of housing credit, right? That's afforded to police officers to allow them to live in the community. Yes, there might be some type of special type of residents that are in communities that a police officer can live in if they so choose. I feel like, because there are a lot of communities where folks do want the police there. They want more of a police presence because they feel unsafe. And I feel like folks feel so much safer when they know that their officer's name, when they know their officer's squad car, when they know their face, and they feel like their officer knows them because they say, hey, if I actually make a call, I know that the folks showing up will know me or have a reference of me. And I can say this as someone who has had to make calls before and even had a situation I'll share here with you where recently I just had an event. After the event, someone gets assaulted, right? It was happened a street down away from me. After this event, someone got assaulted and had 6 fractures to their skull. And I about a week later, a detective calls me and say, hey, is this Paperboy Prince? And I say, yeah. Ha, Paper, yeah. Hey, how's it going? And he says, hey, Paperboy, I don't know if you remember me, but I actually helped you when your bus got broken into. And we talked before about that. I want to talk to you about another issue. I said, sure, let's talk. And he said that someone is accusing you of assaulting them and breaking their skull in 6 places. And he says, now, look, I know you. As soon as he told me it was you, it sounded crazy. I said, I know, Paperboy, that just doesn't, it's not believable. Anything is possible, but that's not believable. And I told him that, no, that wasn't true. And I was able to help them in that investigation. They had some photos and videos and some of the people that I knew or saw, I was able to actually help with that investigation. What's my point? My point is that when you actually have a connection with the folks in your police department, in your precinct, in your community, not only does that help to more quickly solve crimes and issues, but it makes folks that much more comfortable talking to the police that are maybe from communities that have been seen as more vulnerable in these situations.
No, I think, listen, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. I mean, I would take it a step further, honestly. I believe that everybody that works for New York City, including the politicians, should live in New York City. And I think it's a big problem I've seen throughout my career over and over again. People that work for New York City say, I don't care, I don't live here. And I'm like, wow, that's really nice that you don't care, that you're a teacher, you're a cop, you're a firefighter, you don't care about the city. You don't care about the politics of the city. I mean, a big thing where we see the low voter turnout, I think that you solve that issue almost immediately if you require almost everybody that works for, everybody that works for New York City to live in New York City, including the politicians. So I get a lot of flack for that myself, and I don't disagree with you at all. I just kind of have a clarifying question because, I think a lot of people, and I see people in this chat too, oh, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Hear the man out. This is what this platform is. This is a free speech platform. We let people express ideas, and we're going to go through the ideas. If you don't like it, leave. No hard feelings, but but I just want to clarify something, because I think something you said about the mental health. Are you saying that police should roll around, that you would dedicate a team to respond to mental illness, like any calls for an emotionally disturbed person? Are you saying that they would roll around as a team with a psychiatrist or with somebody of that nature and respond specifically to those calls? Because if that's what you're saying, then I would 100% support that those calls are taken off the queue, not for your average patrol officer to handle, but for a qualified team to deal with when we deal with homeless, when we deal with the mentally ill, as opposed to sending a team out to go write people summonses. I would 100% support that idea. Is that what you said? Because I thought that's what you said.
Exactly. So that's exactly what I said, in saying that, hey, if things turned left, that team would be able to step in and hopefully, deal with it with force if needed, right? If things escalated. But I know Eric mentioned, there's times where these things can get violent quickly, and, they can take a turn, which I've seen. Folks can seem like I've had a guy who seemed like the most normal guy ever, and then just at the flip of a switch turned. And,
it's unpredictable.
It can be very unpredictable. So I want to say that this is something that is a case by case basis and dealing with, and it won't be easy. I don't think it'll be easy, but I think that it's a step in the right direction. And you know, sometimes in these cases, I've seen sometimes cops that are rookies end up escalating the situation with a person that is already, he's not going to be able to respect you. He's not going to be very responsive already. So folks expecting them to have the same level of responsiveness as another citizen ends up being a problem in and of itself, and then things can escalate. So, but I want to be clear that I feel like this is a very difficult issue that has been unfairly passed on to the police department. And so having a qualified mental health professional lead that team, not just be there, not be in the background and saying, hey, I don't think you should do that, but actually be leading the team, and then being able to call in the police that are right there on site as things escalate. So so that was my thought on that. And yeah, you know, if folks have an issue or have something to say, that's great for you know, whoever in the chat or whatever. That's great. You know, I don't make myself hard to find. I'm probably the most, I was at what before the most followed person in the mayoral race, and one of the people that they try to shut out the most, because I don't just try to dunk on the police for cheap points. My thing is bringing us together with unity, sharing honest sentiment from folks that are in the community and how they feel, and trying to translate that in a way that can hopefully lead us to unity and learning. And like, again, I said to John in the DMs that I feel like this can be a great conversation, a great learning conversation, because we don't have enough of these conversations. We really don't, for whatever reason, we don't. And it might be folks from my perspective don't have the opportunity, or folks from your perspective don't have the opportunity. But I mean, the more that we hear from each other, the more that we can learn, the more that we can solve these problems. And yeah, this is why I'm running for mayor. You know, this is the reason that I'm running for mayor, to actually have the conversations, learn from as many people as possible, take what you guys tell me, folks in your chat tell me, and then translate that to folks in the community.
I think you've been watching the podcast, because we talk about that all the time. And I agree with you. Communication breaks barriers. And I say all the time, opposition meets opportunity. And so John and I never close the doors when it comes to having anyone on this platform, right? So, you know, I always say, why build walls? Let's open doors. And I want to open the doors to everyone, even if it's a different point of view than I have, because at some point I get to hear the root cause of your perspective. You get to the root cause of our lens. And somehow maybe we can put them together and say, okay, what makes sense? Right? Because if you're the mayor, you serve all people of New York City, not just a specific type. Anyone that lives there, or anyone that's a tourist there on any given day. So with that being said, I did go through a survey that you filled out with a fine-tooth comb. And I saw some of the answers you went there. Right? You had given some of your responses. Obviously, we talk a lot on this podcast about the New York City Council. And there's, you know, from our perspective, and I agree at this point, I hear what you're saying, that you're not looking to abolish the police or defund, but kind of restructure and find different avenues on different approaches. And I respect it. So with that being said, the New York City Council has been chipping away at the police department day in and day out, and stripping away and creating obstacles when it comes to public safety. Now, I've read in your survey that you would not believe in veto powers for the mayor when it comes to city council, unless it's extraordinary circumstances. But right now, the city council is trying to remove the gang database, things like that, what we feel is a real hurdle for policing and public safety. What are your thoughts? And I don't know if you've been following that the city council wants to remove the gang database, which is a tool for the police to monitor known gangs in the city and to keep everyone safe. You talk about love. It's important that we keep these young kids safe. What are your thoughts on the gang database for the NYPD?
So to start with answering this question, many folks in the city council are fans and supporters of me. They followed me for a long time. Some of them before they've ever ran for office were elected. Some of them reached out to me and I had conversations with them. They asked for advice before they ran for office. It's a true story. That being said, I feel like a lot of them are extremely unqualified. Basically, my issue of why I even run for office and why I'm here, and kind of that it's a miracle that I'm even here on your show, or that I'm a candidate that's gotten over 100,000 votes in New York City, right? Is that basically they are propped up folks that have been funded by these democratic clubs that handpick people. They'll handpick someone who doesn't have community knowledge or doesn't have a community background or doesn't have a public profile at all. They'll handpick somebody they can control, put them in place, fund them, give them all the pretty graphics so they look like, hi, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so, working person for you, da-da-da-da. They're a hard-working community person who da-da-da-da. I'm like, I've never seen this guy in my life. I don't know this guy. Nobody I know. Do you know this? Nobody knows this woman. They're like, hey, I'm a great Latina person. I'm a black da-da-da. I'm a gay person. I'm a woman da-da-da. That's all great, right? I'm a business owner. That's all great. I love that. I love folks from different backgrounds. But what ends up happening, and which is why I run for office, and why I specifically try to stay away from the matching funds program, the whole donation system that's gone on in New York City, it's completely corrupt. Why I stay away from the endorsement process, it's been completely corrupt, and it's a way that to defraud voters. So saying that to say, I really feel like the entire city council is just lost is the best word, and they've been placed there, propped up. Now they have inflated egos and aren't really good at their job. You know, they're just not good at their job. Even if you look at some of their backgrounds, I'm like, wait, you've never ran a business in this city. You've never, but you're legislating on businesses. You've never been on the streets in the city, but you're telling us what you're going to do in the streets. You don't have much of an education, but you're telling us what you're going to do about education. So to me, it's completely confusing. And
I like it.
Again, this is the biggest reason that I've run for office. Even if you look at the mayoral candidates, I've gotten more votes for mayor than everyone that they're saying is the mayoral candidate combined, except for Scott Stringer. I think he ran as well. But outside of him, every single one, I've gotten more votes for mayor than all of them combined. And this is on one of the smallest budgets in New York City election history. I've gotten the most votes per dollar in any mayor race ever. And so I am proud of that simply because we're not propped up by a Democratic club that says, hey, let's find this person and use them as a mouthpiece for our issues. That's not me. I'm somebody who actually comes from having, I have my own gallery space. I have a bunch of other spaces that I create and have had thousands of conversations with folks. And this is what informs my ideas and policies. And I've met with them. Now, to your question about the gang database, I gave that background to just get into that. I completely understand the perspective of it being a place where you can kind of track gang members, where you can say, hey, if some type of issue happens, there's an ability to say, check that gang database and say, hey, is this person in the gang or were they affiliated? So, and I think that just from being a part of pop culture and in a mutual aid, I've seen that gangs are on the rise. You would think it's going down, but it's actually becoming cool to be in a gang in a lot of places in the city. So I think that this is a bigger issue than folks realize. And I also blame media. I think that it's been commercialized to be in a gang. You'll see gang members, whether at the Super Bowl or on TV, and it's being normalized. So I have a serious problem with that. And that's not okay with me. So that on one side, I fully think that there should be a way to track and hunt down gang members and break up gangs. On the other side, which folks that have issues with the gang database come from, is that, the idea is that even going back to the 90s, right, that in certain areas, it's been used to unjustly categorize people of color as gang members, right? So somebody who might not be in a gang, but he lives in this building, he might handshake some guys coming outside of the building. He gets included in the gang database, even though this guy is just a student who lives in this building. He can't control that this is where his mama can afford to live, and he just happens to live there. And to even be able to exist in that community and not be a target of the gang members, he has to be able to fraternize and deal with them in a way that placates their ego and all of that. So I think it gets tricky in those situations, and folks get categorized as gang members that aren't as gang members. So for me, I would love a chance that if I was mayor, to meet with different police departments and the leadership and see exactly how when those breakdowns happen of folks that are getting again classified as gang members who aren't gang members, and from folks who are outside of the community trying to figure out if this person is in a gang or not. So that's when it gets tricky. I think that now that there are folks who are openly on social media showing that they're in a gang, that should be dealt with. I think there are folks who are openly on social media brandishing weapons and talking about crimes that they want to commit and all of that. I think that should be dealt with. That should be categorized, all of that. My caveat is, again, the people that slip through the cracks and are classified as gang members that aren't, and then get unfairly targeted because of that. But as far as dealing with gang violence, I think that that's a really serious issue. And this is something that the Love team would be there to help make sure that when young men feel like I don't have any choice, so I'm going to be in a gang, that the Love team can intercede before that happens. But obviously, once someone is in a gang and has that gang mentality, that's something where I do feel like, the guys with guns should be there for and have a force around. But, as a young person, and one of the reasons that my mother took me out of New York for a period of time was folks were recruiting me to be in gangs, right? I wanted to go to school. I wanted to play basketball. Also, I'll say this here, anybody out there that wants to play me one-on-one in basketball, I'm happy to do that. But all right, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
I want to do the shoot off. I want to play horse with you, just like you do with Andrew Yang.
Okay, let's do that. That'll be fun. I'm down. So let's make it happen. We could live stream it and everything. So, but I was getting recruited to be in a gang. And, this guy, he comes up to me. It was the weirdest thing to me. The first time I got asked to be in a gang, I'm sitting in a park and this kid comes up to me. We're both maybe like 14 or 15. And we're listening to some music and we're like talking about artists we like and all that. And he's like, "Do you bang?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? Do I like girls? Like, what do you mean? And he's like, nah, do you like gang bang? And he was like saying it honestly, like it was like a club, like, yo, we can be like competition or all of these things. And I was just like super confused. So, but basically he didn't have a family, friends, a father, much of a community, but his community was a gang. And he was literally selling it to me as that. He's like, yo, you should join. It's a lot of fun. It's all of these things. So I come from this as someone who has been actively recruited to be in a gang. Luckily, my parents put me in church. So I was in church all of that time and was able to get away from that. But a lot of youth aren't. This is their only option. It feels like their only option. And these guys have a lot of power and strength. So they have a lot of influence. So that's why I feel like having love is so important on the front end. Having love is so important on the front end, so before folks get there. So I don't know if my answer on the gang database, if that kind of made sense to you, but that's kind of where I come from it. Just like the folks that fall through the cracks is where it becomes an issue.
So I've been pretty open. I've been targeted by the police department. I've been labeled as a gang member as a youth. I've been arrested as a youth. We've been targeted by the New York City Police Department for allowing people to come on this platform and give their opinion. So I'm totally against like Big Brother at all. Like I don't ever buy the notion I need you to keep me safe. Like when you can't even clean your own room and things like that, So I'm totally with you on that. The gang database, though, it's like to me, it highlights like a bigger problem in New York City, particularly in New York City Council, and it actually pushes through to the Assembly and to the Senate too, because it's the basis of why they want to abolish the gang database. So if you're placed in the gang database because you openly admit to be a gang member, or because you were involved and arrested in gang-related activity, at certain time periods you will be removed for not doing that. But while in the gang database, the NYPD is not actually using that to target you. It's actually being used to keep gang members safe. So when there's a shooting that occurs, any shooting or any form of violence or an assault, the victim or the person that is arrested that's responsible, their name will be ran into that database. And the reason that name's being ran is because we know whenever there's gang violence, there's retaliatory acts that happen. So you being placed in the gang database, now say you're a victim, I run your name in the gang database, boom, it pops. Yeah, he's a gang member. He's from Brownsville. His rival crews are X, Y, and Z. And the police department uses that database to deploy resources to not only your neighborhood, but to your rival neighborhoods as well, in order to prevent further shootings. So while in the database, that information is not shared with landlords, it's not shared with schools, it's not shared with employers, it's not shared with anybody. It's literally like an internal resource that the NYPD uses. And the only thing that city council and Jumaane Williams has come up with to say the reason why it should be abolished is because it's made up of 99% Black and brown people. And that's what we've been seeing time and time again as the basis for decriminalizing minor crimes, such as urinating, such as marijuana, such as, and to me, that's not really an argument. It's like, well, okay, 99% of the people in the database are Black and brown. Does that mean that the NYPD is racist? What's the demographic of the gang makeup in New York City? And when you look at it, it's identical. And it's like, well, it is what it is. And so, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts about, like, the gang database is nuanced because, it gets painted totally what it's not. But as far as any type of legislation and just using a number statistic, using race, really, in my opinion, with no other backup data on it, because if I just gave you that data, it's like, oh, wow, it's only 99% Black and brown people. Yeah, but what are the gangs comprised of New York City? And then, so who should be in it? Should we just start throwing Hasidic people in there, even out the numbers? I don't understand the argument of why we're pulling it down. But yeah, and that's what I believe is the basis for most legislation in New York City, is they're using this number game. It's a number game.
Yeah. We could have a whole podcast just on this question alone, honestly. Because there's so many things. I'll say this. First off, I do think that politicians consistently will leverage race as a way to kind of drive home their point and try to make it seem like they're for everybody, but when they're not. Because if you wanted to help Black people, or brown people, you're in a position to do that more than 99% of people. So if anybody should be able to do it, it is those politicians, but they'll consistently use these stats. But what I will say, as kind of, when you mentioned that 99% of the gang database is this, the thought is basically that historically, right, the NYPD hasn't had the best record in dealing with folks of color, or the most the kind of, like, what we've been talking about. There hasn't been the best community unity and understanding there sometimes in communities of color, specifically the Black community. And so anything that seems like it is unfairly targeting, or it is over targeting or over policing, which happens in these communities, because you mentioned like adding Hasidic people in there, right? Which is funny, but also it's like, wait, if there was that same level of over policing or consistent presence there, or databases of folks in those communities and all of that they do. Again, I'm not trying to compare apples to apples exactly, but what I'm trying to say is that any other racial group, that might be a compelling argument. If you said, hey, it's 99% people that are Hasidic in this thing, that might be a that might be a problem in this city, right? And if you say that it's 99% people that are Irish in this thing, that might be a problem. And folks can highlight and say, well, hey, if you spent just as many resources in this community for that, and we know that a lot of crimes go unreported. I know that it's something like only 30 or 40% of it's less than that of violent crimes ever get solved. So folks think that these things are getting solved, and a lot of these things, these tactics, they aren't working because the violent crimes aren't getting solved. And again, it's hard to, I'm not saying that it's easy by any means to try to put the pieces of what happened back together backwards. That's not easy. I wouldn't sign up to be a detective. It's a difficult job. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that in our current system, a lot of the tactics that we're using aren't solving violent crimes. A lot of it is a way to hopefully deter from violent crime, which I definitely think needs to be done. But some of these issues aren't solving violent crime. So that's kind of my thought on that. So as far as the 99% thing, look, I feel like if these are the folks that are making up most of the gangs, it makes sense that might be a larger distribution of folks that are in the gang database. However, what folks would say back to that is, well, if you're spending a majority of your time and resources in these neighborhoods and focusing on crimes specifically that are in these neighborhoods, then yes, you will have a higher concentration of those folks. But that wasn't my retort for the gang database. As you heard, mine was specifically around the folks that fall through the cracks, and that that it can just be a bad situation to be in. But yeah, I think that it's easy to say, hey, it's all Black people on this thing, and then have a bunch of folks back you up just for that alone. A lot of folks will back you up just for that alone. So for me, I think that it's important to recognize race, especially as it comes into policing, because it's a important factor just based on history alone. It's an important factor. But I know that in a lot of these communities, they want more policing. They want more police. I mean, I probably am on the ground more than most, and most folks in these communities are asking for more police. It's the specific tactics, how they're done, and the connection with the community. Sometimes they'll want the police there, but then when they come, they'll go after this guy instead of this guy, and it's that type of thing. And so yeah, that's where I mentioned of even the things that I was saying about positive reinforcement, right? If the last time you saw the cops, he gave you a ticket for $100 that you get, $100 that you get, how much more open and willing are you to reporting a crime or letting folks know about gang activity? If that police officer lives in your community, how much easier is it to identify folks who are gang members and a part of the gang database? If we have a love team, how many more folks can we stop from joining in the gangs and getting into that pipeline and all of that? So that's kind of where it's not just a one way approach. It's kind of coming at it from a bunch of different ways. So yeah.
I agree with you. As far as the gang database, I think this is something that we could talk about for hours because there's just so much minutia to it, and I think it's very important. And as John said earlier, to monitor the gangs, it's actually the purpose of it, and the mission is actually to keep these gang members safe. And unfortunately, it takes intrusive police work, and part of intrusive police work is actually monitoring with a close eye. Now, we did have in the NYPD, we had some of our active members or retired, you might be familiar with yourself. I think you spent a lot of time in the Bronx. In Brooklyn North and the Bronx, we had what was called a ceasefire operation. And that was a collaborative effort with the NYPD and other agencies, along with the courtroom, to actually target and actually specifically monitor gangs that were riddled by violence, those gangs that were responsible for shootings, and other rival gangs that were actually victims of shootings, to be closely monitored by the police. And what I found was, working the South Bronx, the special operations. Now, Police Service Area 7 is the number 2 precinct in the city for the amount of crews and gangs. And what we found is a lot of those gang members when they were arrested or summoned, didn't want to be in the gang. They didn't want to be there, but they were there. But the monitoring of that gang, even though they didn't want to be there, they were self-admitted, many of them, because they had to. But that also kept them safe. The fact that we knew that they were gang members, it's important to know that, to know who they associate with. It for us, it gives us a nomenclature, and it kind of maps it out to know where should this young youth be in the streets to be safe. If I see a particular kid, rhetorically speaking, in a specific area that is a rival gang, because of that gang database, that's information, that's literature, so I can identify this kid is not safe. So I can have a conversation with this kid and say, hey, maybe I can give him a ride home. And it's been done before. Just give him a ride home. Unfortunately, that ceasefire program is not in place anymore. It took a lot of cost, a lot of coordinated efforts, but I think it was a great program. It really specifically zoned and honed in on monitoring these gangs. So you talk about deterring violence, right? Obviously, if you watch the podcast, I always talk about intrusive police work. It's the bedrock and foundation to public safety. So right now, Eric Adams has these quasi-anti-crime teams. We talk about public safety. What would be your public safety team along with your love team? Obviously, some guys out there with guns. What would you support intrusive police work, an anti-crime team, a quasi-anti-crime team, or would you have a different approach to policing other than under broken windows?
So I just have to say, like, hearing you talk, I'm a visionary, so I can see that you really care. It just here right now, I can see you talking, and I can see that you actually care. And not saying that I didn't think that before, but I could see by how you're saying that how much you care, and like to me that inspires me. That gets me going, seeing people from different backgrounds and things that actually care about the community and want to solve the problems. That is so important. And like for me, when you were even saying about the kid who was in the gang who didn't want to be there, it's like my heart goes out to that so much, because and my thought is, even you saying this, is that like, oh my gosh, this is what made me come up with the love team. And from the get-go is that I've spoken to many cops who want to do things, and because of the bureaucracy or because of response times and all these things, they can't pour the excuse me, they can't pour the love and the energy and passion that they want into the communities. I want to be able to unleash lovers who care about the community and actually want to help people and love these people, because somebody who's in the positions that you all see, they need more love more than anything. It's crazy how much these folks are folks that really need a hug and a warm embrace. They really need a man who cares about them. They need a brother, right? A lot of them need a father. They really need that in real time. And unfortunately, our government isn't set up in a way that can be a parent to every person or be a family to every person. But we have an opportunity to have folks on the ground that actually care and love. And like that to me inspires me. Like we could actually do something insane and change the way our world looks and really bring it to a utopia, which is why I set the bar so high for my work and my campaign to the level of a utopia, when we have folks that care and really want to just wrap their arms around people and support them with love. And the hardest, and we need real lovers who are trained and love to do that, because I know how jaded you can be after seeing some of the worst things happen over and over and over again. People do terrible things over and over and over again. As someone who's a candidate for mayor, I've had an opportunity to see so many terrible things and so many horrible stories, and that it almost makes me jaded in a lot of ways. And I have to kind of step away and recalibrate and get back into love. I can only imagine seeing some of the things that cops see. So I just had to triple down on the love. And when I heard you talking, it really reminded me of like the passion that first came from the love team, and imagine the same way when I was in Times Square performing, doing my show, and 12 armed cops came up to me and told me that you had to move. They were going to take all my stuff. And right, I'm like, wow, I get that they're doing what they were told, but at the same time, if 12 people came up to me with love and compassion and all of that and understanding, like, wow, what would that have done for my day or week and all of that? And so your question about was specifically about Eric Adams and.
Well, it would be about what would be your public safety plan, as far as would you have I know you talked about the love team, but separate from that, would you have guys with guns doing intrusive police work, like under broken windows, actually engaging in anti-crime police work? Maybe they're in plain clothes, or Eric Adams has his quasi-anti-crime teams. Would you have police doing intrusive police work where they actually stop, question, possibly frisk?
So for me, I'm not a fan of stop and frisk at all. I feel like that I feel like that it escalates issues, and I feel like that it creates criminals, and it creates folks that have an issue with the police department. Because if I'm walking down the street and the cops search me, I will never want to help them with a investigation again. In fact, I might feel like I want to do the opposite, and I might breed more discontent. I might share that on social media. I might tell my friends, my girlfriend, and that word spreads that, hey, look, they're coming and targeting me, and now it feels like an opposing force, right? So I feel like that something that would work 1,000 times better than stop and frisk is stop and shake. Stop somebody on the street, talk to them, and shake their hand. I mean, we've never tried this. People deep down, they also love cops. They love the humanity in them. They love the person in them. When you watch TV, I would say 75% of popular shows, the protagonist is a police officer or somebody that is a cop, right? So it's not like people are completely foreign to rooting for cops and caring for cops and seeing the humanity in them and all of that. People see that. They understand that. But right now, the leadership, the politicians have said, oh, the only way to deal with these people is treat them like they are the enemy and go after them and stop and frisk. But if you go up to them, talk to them, shake their hands, get to know them, sometimes folks will tell them on themselves, right? They'll tell on themselves and you'll know. But also you'll meet people and you'll hear things that will lead to things. You'll be like, hey, just so you know, there are some kids at this school that are bringing in weapons. Hey, just so you know, like there are people that they just never been approached in that way. And I feel like if we get it to the point where folks feel like, hey, if I'm talking to the police, it's someone who that is caring and someone that is understanding and not someone that's going to lock me up. Because right now what happens whenever you are talking to the police, it's like you're about to get locked up or something is about to happen, or you could, say something wrong or tap them or look the wrong way. And that turns into an arrest. Right. So for me, I think that stop and frisk, it puts the officers in a bad situation because they have to, just start off an interaction in a negative way. And I think that there are just better options. I think that going up to people, shaking hands, talking to people would go so much further. I think that would go so much further, and it would really break down a lot of issues in the community. Now, there are a lot of people who are going to get mad at me for saying, hey, why are you telling folks that they should talk to the cops and be open to the cops and do all of that when, one of the things a lawyer will say is you have the right to remain silent, right? And all of this stuff can be used against you. So I know folks that will come at me against that. But again, my hope is for a love team, for unity in a way that we can bring folks together and not have this kind of contentious relationship.
So listen, I like what I'm hearing. You don't want an adversarial relationship with the community and the cops. You want, we shouldn't be starting off looking at people as targets. I'm with you. I'm with you. Now that's very nuanced statement. It's much easier said than done. There's a lot of work to get there. One of the reasons that the reason that I'm podcasting and not still in the New York City Police Department, New York City's vaccine mandate. Okay, so I'm not going to tell a story about myself. I'm going to give my good friend. So my good friend, member of the finest Unfiltered team, Marlon Bethel, first generation immigrant. His family immigrated here when he was a young boy. He becomes a New York City police officer. He rises to the rank of detective. Served 16 years with the New York City Police Department. He then works in the counterintelligence division of the NYPD, fighting terrorism. Works throughout the entire pandemic. Very little equipment. Goes to work every day. Gets infected with the virus. Vaccine mandate comes out almost a year and a half after the pandemic started, when things are starting to open back up, and they tell Marlon and myself, we can no longer continue to work if we're unvaccinated against a virus that we already contracted and have antibodies for. Marlon says, no problem. I'll do it. I just want to take the FDA approved version, and there is not one available on the United States market currently. So if I could get the FDA one, I'll do it. If not, I can't. Marlon Bethel was terminated 7 days later by the New York City Police Department. He did not receive a department trial. He was never charged criminally with anything. He was never charged administratively with any failures. He's had an impeccable record with the New York City Police Department. But until today, Marlon Bethel remains terminated from the New York City Police Department. And I believe in my heart, New York City failed Marlon Bethel. And Marlon Bethel is just an example of thousands of people that were affected by this mandate. What are your thoughts on that? Does New York City, does a Paperboy Prince administration, does New York City owe Marlon Bethel an apology? Would you rehire Marlon Bethel with back pay and those similarly situated to him?
I would say 1,000% yes. You know, for me, again, it's kind of like what we were saying about some of the policing stuff. They will make a sweeping decree that said, "Hey, this is done to keep you safe, and we're not doing this with you. We're doing this to you." We don't have a public health plan in this city, even though it's the largest city. It's kind of the front door to America in a lot of ways, where we're most vulnerable to these types of diseases and all types of things. But we don't have a true public health plan, and there was no precedent for this before something like COVID. So then to use that to take away folks' livelihood for something that, you know, obviously we know now that you can still get, you know, COVID from even if you have the vaccine and all of that. I think that it was done very poorly. I thought the whole vaccine mandate situation was done really poorly. I saw how many interactions that it turned folks against each other. And like literally, it would make folks feel like it was okay to yell at you for if you didn't have the vaccine. Or I saw at restaurants, it created a lot of race issues. It created a lot of class issues as well. When folks, you might go to a restaurant, you might go to a bar, and when you didn't have a what's it called, vaccine card, you would have maybe a hostess yelling at you or some type of like, hey, this is a vaccine card. It just doesn't have this. I saw folks, their vaccine cards even being scrutinized and all of that it wasn't official. So there's a lot of issues there. And then also with our teachers, there were teachers that I worked with specifically in my mutual aid group that I actively at the time was trying to see how we can advocate for them to keep their jobs. Because like you said, these folks were considered heroes at one point and what was the word they were using? Essential workers and heroes that are stepping up and putting their bodies on the line at this time. And then when they say, hey, you know, I actually am more comfortable with my natural immunity, or I just don't feel comfortable taking this vaccine at this time, to have them lose their job and then not to bring them back, and then not to, you know, give them an opportunity to even have some type of recourse or talk about what happened. So yeah, that's kind of my thought with that. And I definitely agree on back pay as well. You know, folks have been in dire economic situations, and COVID was a massive wealth transfer. It was basically a situation where they can take wealth from the middle class and lower class and basically quickly grab that to the upper class. And we saw that the richest people got richer, and we've seen the inflation and all the issues for folks that are in the middle class. So I definitely agree with back pay on that. And I would also take it a step further and say that the city owes an apology to all of those city workers that were fired, and saying, hey, you know, we made a mistake. The government made a mistake in trying to show so much that we were doing things to stop COVID that we ended up, you know, casting people aside and making people more vulnerable and putting more issues on our most important departments. So yeah, so that for me is a big one, and I feel like we have to have a kind of, you know what, I'm not going to say that, but go ahead.
I gotta say, I respect, excuse me, I respect that you're willing to have a conversation because I know that in the past you did support the vaccine, saying, hey, if it's going to keep people healthy, then let's do it. But I appreciate the fact that you're malleable and flexible and you're willing to have conversations and say, hey, maybe we did make a mistake or not, and that willing to bring people back. And that's where you show that you're genuine and you're willing to have conversations. And that's what this is about. And not saying, no, it has to be this way. And that's the only way. And I have to say, I want to thank you for that and I respect it. We're an hour and 20 minutes into it. Please like, share, and subscribe. We have Paperboy Prince. Paperboy Prince, just want to make sure you got time. You got the stamina. I'd love to keep going if it's okay with you.
You know what? I'm having a good time. So
Outstanding.
yeah, and I see folks having some good comments. I saw somebody said something about a 800-pound thing in the room that is so that was a good comment actually. But yeah, I had a big problem with the whole vaccine rollout, and even at that time, it was kind of like if you didn't say the right things, you would be deplatformed from social media. It was kind of a place where you couldn't really talk about it in earnest. It was really hard to have a honest communication about COVID and the vaccines and all that at that time, especially from the standpoint of someone like running for office and all of that. It was folks were very emotional. Folks had just lost people. Folks had lost their job. I think a lot of folks were going through mental health issues and depression and all of that. So it was a tough time to have a real conversation. And some people were so like the vaccine was going to save the world, and some people believe that it did, and some people believe the opposite. So it's something that you can really only tell with time, and with more time, you have to give an honest opinion. So.
I respect your opinion. Thank you for actually saying that you bring them back because Marlon Bethel, finest Unfiltered family, super intelligent, and he should be employed by the New York City Police Department. With that being said, I'd love to segue into illegal immigration. I know in the past you have said that you support illegal immigration and you would give a one-time assistance. Obviously, Eric Adams has given so much money. There's a lot of private contracts and rumored people are really making money off illegal immigration. So what is your position on a sanctuary city? You're mayor of New York City. Right now, we have Donald Trump in office, and we have Tom Homan with ICE. What is your position, a sanctuary city? Do you support it? Do you not? Do you support the New York City Police Department coordinating with ICE? What is your position? And also, if you could correlate, you explain about this one-time assistance.
So I'm not sure where you saw that, but I know sometimes they have us do questionnaires where they basically pigeonhole us into certain questions, and I say, "Hey, can you publish my actual answer?" Can you also say, I'll say, "Can you publish what I want?" But they'll say, "No, we have these A, B, C, D, and you have to choose this thing." And I'm like, "Well, that's just not how I think. I get that that's best for your media organization, but for me, I'd like to publish it." I think maybe a couple of them they did, but most of them they just want a yes or no, and it kind of puts you in a pigeonholes you when a lot of these things aren't black and white. There's a lot of gray area in them. So for me, I never was someone who supported specifically illegal immigration. I will say that if someone is seeking asylum from a country, and the idea for asylum is a country where you are, it's hard for you to live, that basically your life is in danger. That's kind of the idea behind asylum. And it's actually pretty hard to prove asylum, that you literally are living in a country where the government or a war or what have you, your life is in danger. So I support, folks that are seeking asylum, whether it be from, Ukraine or Congo or wherever that is. And as we have space for it. So that's that part. What I will say is that, again, this is another question that we could have a whole podcast on, right? Like, this is a one that there's so many ways to look at it, but the one that's on the top of my mind right now is this. Basically, it's another thing that's being used and leveraged by the politicians. And what happens is, this is a city of people from all over the country, all over the world come, and people dream of being a part of the city. And I think that folks having the right to visit, come, even work here in different instances, I think that it makes this city better and more sharper and more creative and interesting the more different pieces that we are allowed to bring in. That being said, what's happened is, especially over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, they have accelerated this displacement, and I would say that some of the mass migration has turned into a new form of gentrification. Speaking specifically from folks in the Black community, a lot of folks feel like there was one point in New York City when Malcolm X was alive where the most Black people in one place was in New York City. Wasn't in Africa. The most Black people just in in one place, in one city, was in New York City. And folks were having large families and all of these things. So voting and all of this. So I say that to say, when you can bring in tens of thousands of people from other countries that don't maybe have the same ideas, customs, or knowledge of the history of this country, it becomes a situation where folks can get displaced. If these folks get some type of assistance or all of that to help them stay in the city while other folks are getting gentrified out of the city, it can feel like displacement. So that's why I said, hey, we deserve a universal basic income for folks that live in, that are citizens of the city as well, and helping them out, not just, folks that are asylum seekers and all of that. And what's basically one of the scariest things is, and why I even speak about this, is a lot of folks that are Democrats will say, hey, we need to help folks and we need to support these folks. And as someone who is I would consider myself one of the furthest in the future politicians that's out there, what I see is folks will come in this country and sometimes be a immigrant, and then after one generation, their politics will be very, very right wing, basically the opposite of what some of the Democratic politicians that advocated for them to be here, their politics. So yeah, it's so many things to talk about here. I'm kind of like thinking about what's the trying to say all I want to say on this, because there's so much to say. But I will say that an important thing.
Paul, time is yours. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, what I will say is that I think that love and unity obviously are super important. And right now, what's happened with whether it's our president or even our mayor, it has been a culture of division where folks are dividing folks. And that's where I have the idea of love centers, which is something else that's crucial to my platform, a love center. I have the Paperboy Prince Love Gallery, which is at 1254 Myrtle Avenue in Bushwick, Brooklyn. We've been open for over 5 years, helping and serving the community, all different types of people. And I've got a chance to see that when we actually bring folks together, I've given away over $1 million of food to undocumented immigrants and citizens of New York as well. And my point is saying that having a place where folks can come together, meet folks of different backgrounds, learn about the history of this country, of their neighborhood, learn different languages, learn about different foods, learn about sports and all these different things that make us who we are, having more kind of a revitalized, re-energized, refunded idea of a community center that is focused on love could be a great way to bring our community together. But right now, what they're doing basically is saying, hey, more immigration, more specifically illegal immigration, and then we need to fast track these folks to work. But I talk to a lot of folks who are having a rough time finding a job, right? And they're saying these folks are doing jobs that people don't want, right? That they're doing the work that nobody wants. But actually, that's the market. That's the job market saying, hey, we don't want to do that job at that pay. You have to raise the pay for us to do that job. So when you enter in a bunch of workers that will do that job for even less than that pay, that basically lowers the effectiveness of the average worker's labor. You know, it lowers the value of their labor. Basically, when you bring in more folks into the workforce that are willing to work for less, it lowers the value of their labor, and that's super important in a city like New York City, where the cost of living is rising so quickly, where the rent is going up so much, where the cost of food, transportation, all of these things. So that is one of my biggest issues, is that folks are talking about, hey, these folks are doing the jobs nobody want, and you know, you don't want to pick up this stuff and you don't want to do that. Well, it's like, well, so you're saying that it's okay for this person to come here and basically be an indentured servant and work for us, and they're a great worker, so that's what they're here for? That doesn't sound very positive to me. And then you're also saying that, hey, you know, all right, well, let's lower the value of the labor of folks who are, maybe they have a high school diploma and they want to be able to get a job working at McDonald's or whatever. And you know, it's tougher for these folks to get the job because folks at these companies know, hey, I can hire somebody who is either a new immigrant or undocumented, and they'll work for less. They'll be more obedient because they have less protections under the law, so I can treat them however I want. And then you know, there'll be less recourse if I have, when I have to let them go. So you know, that really devalues the labor of the worker, especially in a city like New York, where we've worked so hard to have labor protections and really have been at the forefront of the labor movement. You know, Union Square is called Union Square because the unions would gather there so often and have protests and have you know, conversations about how we can group together and use our labor to give us a better life. And so my issue with this is I don't think it actually improves quality of life for folks. It's moving things backward.
So, I mean, ton of points, right, that you brought up there, and they're all valid, you know, because that's one thing, you know. Oh, I hate that term also. It's jobs that Americans won't do. But if we go back to the Great Depression, there were jobs that Americans were actually chasing immigrants, and there was like a rise in hate crime against immigrants at the time to take those jobs back because they're like, you stole our job, and now that job was devalued, right? You're 100% right. But that's where we're at. Like where we, you know, we have big hearts, but our resources are plenty, but they're not unlimited. You know, so and that's the question here. You know, like that's my question for you. You know, I don't. You brought up a lot of good points. What should we do? Should we secure the borders, or should we let everybody in here? You know, you mentioned universal basic income. I see a lot of people in the chat going crazy about that. And it's something, you know, I think, like, you know, there is a lot of socialism based in this country that I don't think people are aware of that's occurring right at this moment in time. Welfare, Social Security, Medicare, the police, fire, they're forms of socialism. Schools, roads, whatever, however you want to get it. These are not, you know, there is a mix of socialism that's in this country. I'll sit there and I'll say, you know, I don't think we utilize the things we have in this country properly, as far as the welfare system. Now, I understand there's a single mother, there are people that are disabled, there are people that actually can't get out there and work, but there are people that we give money to daily that could be utilized for city service or things of that nature. Could you just break us down what your idea? What one is, if you believe that the border should be secured, and if should the borders be secured, should we enforce federal immigration law? And my the third question is, what is your idea of universal basic income, and how does that work? Does that mean I could just take off and I can hang out on my couch and you're going to pay me? Like, what does that look like? I mean, I can't do that. I need a job because I'll lose my mind. But like, what, you know, but like, is that's the question I have. Like, what is that universal basic income?
Yeah. So your first question was about
Should we secure the border?
Secure the border. Yes. So to say that, I'll say this. What I don't like is folks not moving in love. And I do like tough love. I don't think love is always like, yay. Da, da, da." I think that tough love is a real thing, and being honest and real with people and raw is a real thing. So I'm not saying that by any means. But when I see like the Trump administration like memeing, they kind of meme the what is it called? Uh the folks they're deporting. I don't know if you guys have seen this. They've like made like memes out of it, and they've made like videos. And it's like, for me, that's corny. That's so corny, because instead of doing the work of, which is actually hard, of securing the border, you'd rather make a media video to make it look like you're doing the work, and to make people feel like you're doing the work. So to me, that is corny. When it comes to securing the border, that I don't like. But actually securing the border and making sure that there are, because where it becomes difficult is folks that are from further places that want to come to this country or spend a lot of money to come to this country. It's hard. But I talked to someone recently who was a student from China, and she mentioned that she has a lot of Chinese friends that they'll fly, because they can't fly directly to the United States. They'll fly to a couple different countries, and then they'll fly to Mexico and then come through the border through there. And I was like, wait, I thought that was just a joke. That's really happening? And she's like, oh yeah, this is like very happening. This is like normal happening. Like if a friend wants to do it, it's not the easiest thing, but it's definitely doable. And she knows people who's done it. So from that standpoint, I feel like we definitely should secure our border. But I think that we have an opportunity where we have so many folks that want to come here that we should use that. That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. If we got a bunch of people that want to get out, that's a bad thing. I think we have a good problem. First off, saying that it's a problem, but it's a great problem to have. That we want folks that want to come here, that want to be a part of what we're doing, that are excited about what it means to be an American and all of that. So I think that that's a great thing. But the biggest issue is that once folks are there, how they are integrated into society in a real way. I think that's when it becomes a problem. How they're integrated into the job market, how they're integrated into the school system, how they're integrated into housing. I think that becomes a problem. So that's one thing. The second thing, and this is the real important thing when it comes to migration and illegal immigration, and why that there seems to be like a uptick and why folks are behind it, whether they're Republican or Democrat, is that the lowering birth rates in America, right? I'm in my 30s. I don't have a kid or any kids. I have a lot of friends that do, and they don't have kids. They're not looking to have kids anytime soon, especially in New York City. I mean, I know so many young people that are, the last thing they want to do is have a kid. They would maybe spend a night in Rikers before they decided to have a kid. This is just a real thing. And so when you look at the numbers of America and us actually being able to be a country that is considered a superpower, us being able to have gas at the prices that we do, get our imports and clothes at the prices that we do, all of the things that we love, our phones at the prices that we do, that a lot of that is based on us being a country that is heavily populated and has a lot of different people. And when you look at the numbers, we don't have enough people that are going to be living in the country. I mentioned I was recently in South Africa, and one of the things that stuck out to me was the amount of young people I saw there in Cape Town. It was like so many people I saw. I was like, wait, is everyone here from 17 to 25? And if you look at the numbers, most people from 20 to 40 in the next, I think 15 years will be in Africa. Most of the world's young people will be in Africa. They're still having kids in Indonesia. They're still having kids. They're doing something I call growth hacking, right? Which some of the stuff isn't completely ethical. Folks are, maybe they're 13 and they'll start having kids at 13, and then they'll have 7 kids, and this person might have 5 or 6 wives. But they're having so many kids in some of these other countries where for us, because we have all the education and opportunity we do for our own lives, we might not want to have children. So I think the main thing that folks leave out and a lot of politicians leave out when they talk about migration and illegal immigration is like, hey, well, a lot of the things that we're afforded is because we have a country that was built on families that had 7 kids, 5 kids. You know, my mom had 5 kids. One of the reasons that we left New York, it was like, hey, I got 5 kids. I don't want y'all to end up in gangs. I want you guys to be safe. So all of that. I'm the oldest of 5. Now I have 0 kids. I would love to have kids, but you know, and I see this with so many people. So this is a real issue. That's one of the underlying issues of the migration issue, is how are we going to solve the family crisis that's really going on? And that's a perfect segue into universal basic income, right? I think that something like universal basic income, when you see, and this is something I was talking about in 2019, when you see how intense AI is taking jobs, people don't understand. I've been working with AI companies since 2022. I did a project with a company called Boomi, where we made an AI music album. This is before Chat GPT even came out. Before anyone knew what Chat GPT was, I was already had a contract with the AI company, and we were making music, and we did a album with over 250 artists from countries all around the world, from every single continent except for Antarctica. So my point is that AI is not going to slow down in taking jobs, right? All of a lot of the blue collar jobs will be consistently given to migrants, and a lot of the white collar jobs will be given to AI, and they'll be kind of filtered and packaged into AI. And there's a lot of incentives, excuse me, for software companies to roll up somebody's job into an AI. So I think that we need to be proactive in a lot of these things and have solutions before the problem happens, because a lot of what happens now is that a problem happens and then we're scrambling to find a solution, and the solution isn't good enough, and we scramble to find another solution. Solution isn't good enough, and then so many people fall through the cracks in that time period. So that's why since 2019, I've been vocally and publicly advocating for a universal basic income. And this isn't something that's a new idea. This is something that Martin Luther King was talking about in every speech he had before he died, right? He would talk about a guaranteed income, and he would say, hey, we have Martin Luther King Day. We have people who think that Martin Luther King is a great guy and that he said, I have a dream. And they remember that part, but they forget that a part of his dream was a guaranteed income. And when I talk about a guaranteed income, I say, wait, New York City by budget alone would be one of the largest states. If it was a state, and I also am advocating for, I need to put this up on the site, I'm advocating for New York City statehood at this point. And this is another way that we would help to better fund the police department, better fund the love team, and all of these things. But I think that New York City should be its own state because it has a larger budget and brings in more money than every single state except 3. And so we live in the richest state with the most money of all time. It's hard to understand when you're in that moment, but you're like, wait, I live in the richest city of all time? You mean there's more money happening here than anywhere else in the world? This is it. This is the richest one. And it doesn't feel like that for people. So my idea with the Utopia plan is like, how can we make it feel like that for people? And I think that the $2,000 a month universal basic income is ambitious. It's also a bargaining tactic. We want to set the bar there high so that we at least know what we're fighting for. And it is proactive. It's before the AI takes more jobs, because at first when Chat GPT first came out, people were like, oh, that's nothing. Now you see how many more jobs are being displaced. And they're not just jobs that people can say, oh, I don't care about that. That's a blue collar worker. It's the white collar jobs that are being the hardest hit right now with this type of stuff. So that's kind of my idea. And the reasoning behind that is, this is something that's been talked about for a long time from leaders that this country sees as some of its premier leaders and world leaders. And, during the pandemic where we had the stimulus, which was funny because I was talking about universal basic income at this time and the importance of it. People were like, I don't get it. What's the need? And then all of a sudden the stimulus happens, and it's kind of a different version of that. And it gives folks an opportunity. I think this would do more to solve crime. I mean, because so many crimes, and you guys can speak to this probably better than I can, so many crimes are stuff that's happening for under $500, right? It's not like people who are duking it out over, you owe me $1 million. No, you owe me $1 million. No, these guys are going to court over that. It's the guys who are like, yo, you owe me $50, or you owe $50. Oh yeah? Like that's when it happens. in my opinion, and from what I've seen. So I feel like having an opportunity for folks to not start at zero, folks to have something in their pocket, to not be in a dire situation. Because I meet people that when folks come to me as Paperboy, they're like, "Yo, I have no options. What can you do? I know you do all of the politics stuff, man. Like, is there some type of like organization I can go to, or somebody I can call? Like, I get asked for money every single day. When I ask folks for what is the number one thing that would be helpful for you, or what you think that can be done, they're like, "Yo, it's just not enough money. I need money." And then the job market is shrinking. There are, less jobs available. And you guys mentioned the migration. I mentioned the AI. So all of these things are happening at once, and that's why I think having proactive, creative solutions that yeah could go a long way. And again, we live in the richest city in the richest country of all time. So for me, it's like, let's start acting like it.
Awesome conversation, by the way. I love it. I'm actually having a good time. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for showing up today. Seriously, I really appreciate it. But you said something earlier, and it really signifies and solidifies, validates that a long platform like this one is it's a great opportunity for someone in politics or running for a position like yourself to actually explain their platform in detail. Because, I obviously I read a lot about your bio and stuff that you stand for, but it does box you in, right? It only gives me so much information, and things I've heard you say out there doesn't give full context. It's pretty much soundbite. So here you get to really explain it. And now you just talked about, this is the richest city, could be its own country. I mean, I'm sorry, it could be its own state. You're absolutely right. You're spot on when it comes to the economics in New York City. But the question is also, how do we keep that going? And from what I read also, in addition to universal base income, is that you support reparations for those specifically impacted. So how does that work? How does that work if that's true? If you support reparations, how does that work? Where does that money come from? And who's on the receiving end of reparations?
Yes. So I support reparation for two things. And I do want to speak about, I've seen some of the comments. Remind me to come back to the comment about the culture that creates violence,
The
because
floor is yours. Anything you want.
but I wanted to answer your question first, and then if you could
Thank you.
remind me to come back to that. You asked about reparations, and this is something that I'm proud to be on the forefront of, and stand out and talk about. I support reparations right now for two things. One, for victims of the war on drugs. I feel like now New York City just surpassed $1 billion made from marijuana, and there were so many folks who were unfairly targeted. And I'm not talking about folks who are, gang members, terrible drug dealers that were terrorizing their community, but I'm talking about folks who maybe were smoking a joint or something like that and got thrown in jail, and lost so many job opportunities, lost family, and all of these things, lost parts of their life because of that. So that's one thing. For the war on drugs, because I felt like it was such a intrusive thing, and it was kind of like a wild goose chase, especially for folks who were just using certain drugs. That's personally how I feel, but that is a longer conversation. That's I don't know if we have time to get into today. And the other thing is I support reparations for folks who were families of enslaved individuals. And a lot of folks don't know that Wall Street is built on mass graves of African people, right? And there's actually now there is a memorial there that says that. But all throughout New York and throughout Brooklyn, there are mass graves of African people, and there are several sites that have been deemed as African burial grounds, where there were folks that were enslaved, and instead of even them having their own graves, they're just giant graves with bodies that are dumped there, that literally are right under the city right now. Church Ave, right in that area, that is a huge African burial ground, graves. And this is the history of the city. A lot of it isn't pretty, but it's just what it is. And the works that these folks put in help to make this city what it is. A lot of the subway stops. I was talking to somebody about this. I was like, so many subway stops are named after folks that owned slaves, right? That made their money from, again, raping people, right? I don't know if I can go there on your platform, but just say that. But that made their money from raping people, from breaking up families, from brutalizing people, and all of these things, and breeding human beings, really breeding human beings. I think it's great to break down when you say, hey, okay, if I took your mom, took your father, put them in my house, I used your mom to breed people. And then I took their kids once they turned 12, I used them to breed people and to be my slave for years. And then I built that to now in 2025 to help this city to be one of the richest of all time, right? I feel like that there is some, we're complicit in that, and that we need to rectify that, and that just spiritually, right? I told you that, my grandfather is a bishop in this city, was a bishop, and my father's a pastor, my mother is a pastor as well. I think that spiritually, it's just not a good thing to have on your jacket. All of that brutalization that's gone on for a long time. So I feel like repairing that, doing reparations so that we can move past that. And again, it's not to say that it'll be forgotten, but to say that, hey, we're actively taking steps to right the wrongs that has gone on. And I would say that we need to reverse this and have real love. This is what I mean about love. I said that I support back pay for NYPD officers who are done wrong. I feel like when we make mistakes, we should say that we made a mistake and do right by it. And I feel like in New York City, this city has so much money, and this country has so much money. When it's time to go to war for insert country here, right? I'm not going to pick out a specific country, but when it's time to run for mayor, I'm sorry, when it's time to run for to go to war, we have all the money that we need. We have more than enough money, and folks see that. They're like, wait, we gave $1 billion to this country, we gave this many billions to this country, we have this many billions to this country. We would have been paid off these things to our country if it would have been done. And what the reason why I really love reparations is because it sets us so much forward socially in front of other countries. It allows us to say, hey, okay, so many countries have issues and trouble around whether it was colonization or brutalization or all of these things, but we're saying that we recognize the issues there. We're going to repair it and move forward, and we're not going to hide from it. We're going to repair it and move forward so that our future is more equitable for everyone.
So listen, I understand what you're saying, and if you look at the history of this city or this country, and I'm not picking out America here. If you look at the history of the world, I mean, the atrocities that happened to basically every immigrant group that came into the New York City, I mean, it's awful, and I don't know that we even have that money to right the historical wrongs, and that's the thing that bothers me a little bit when we speak about reparations, because I see black people jumping up and down, not all black people, but some black people jumping up and down, and I'm like, dude, you're not from Africa. Your family was never slaves. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not, and I'm like, you're not going to benefit from that. They're talking about people who their family was slaves. It's not just because the color of your skin does not mean that you're going to get reparations. And my thing is this, like, and it's going to lead back into the question of the violence and all that. Like, I don't agree that we could right the wrongs of historical past, but I agree that we sent, I watched Republicans and Democrats cheer as they sent billions of our dollars out of this country to the Ukraine. And I'm like, we have people starving on our streets. We have people who are harmed here, and you're jumping up and down wearing an Israeli pin or a Ukraine pin or whatever other pin you want, a Palestinian flag, whatever other flag you want. I'm like, I agree with the statement America first or New York City first if you're a New York City elected official. I don't know why we're sending the billions of dollars out of our economy when there are things that need to be righted here immediately. So I would listen, I would be open to having a discussion and hearing that argument further, but like I think more importantly right now we need to do the if we're going to talk about reparations, we should be talking about the reparations for the people that we could help right this second. The people that were victims of whether it was unlawful mandates, whether they were crime victims, whether they were victims of brutalized by the state. I think those are the bigger conversations that we had instead of like before we try to fix the past is what I'm saying is I think we should fix the present. I think we got big problems right now. And so that's my whole point on that. Logic's Finest had a question in here. Or it was really of a statement. He said that and I'm sorry if I misquote you, Logic. I don't know where that statement went, but he basically said that like universal basic income won't change. Oh, here we go. Reparations won't change the culture that glorifies violence. It will only reinforce it and remove incentives for personal growth. It's a fantasy idea. What do you think about his statements around the culture glorifying violence? I believe he's referencing rap music and whatever that other form
Right.
of rap music that's growing.
Well, yeah. I would so to respond to what you said, I would say a couple things. First, reparations was an idea that came from the US government, right? And originally it was a plan to say, hey, we can't just like free people and then like, give them nothing when we put them in this predicament and created this situation. So we'll give them like, I don't know, like a couple acres, maybe like say 40 acres, give them like, I don't know, a cow or a mule or something. Yeah. That was the plan. That was literally the plan came up with by the government. And these people were slave owners that said, yo, this just doesn't seem right. Slave owners were saying that we should have reparations. Literal slave owners like, I don't know, this just makes more sense. It would be just a better situation. And then the president after that came in decided to not do that and not go forward with that. But there were some cases where folks even did receive that. That's one part. The second part, and this is specific to New York City, is the redlining and basically the housing issues. So, there were a lot of parts of New York City and just around the country where the number one way that folks are able to amass wealth and hold wealth is what? Real estate, right? That's the number one way that you're able to pass down real estate. But for so long, Black people weren't allowed to own real estate in this country. They weren't allowed to build that, even though they were here before most white people in the country. They weren't allowed to own the number one way that you can build wealth through your family. Like, when you break that down and say, hey, okay, for the next 200 years, you're not allowed to amass wealth in this way. Also, you're not allowed to learn how to read. Legally, in the law, they told people you're not allowed to learn how to read. How much harder is it to advocate for yourself and the things that you need for your community when by law, you're not allowed to learn how to read? Like, it's illegal. Like, you can go to jail, your hand will be cut off, all of this, they'll poke your eyes out. These are real things that happen for people that even attempted to teach folks to learn how to read. I'm talking about this happened to white people that were like, nah, I don't feel like it's right. Let's teach these folks how to. These were folks were getting like having all these things happen and stuff. So for me, the strongest argument for reparations, even if somebody says, okay, 400 years of slavery, that's not that. Even if they can, say that's not a big deal. The real one is, and we're seeing the issues of this today. And this is where it comes to even some of the public safety issues and stuff like that. When you remove the ability for folks to own real estate for so long, and then you devalue their real estate, and even the appraisers, right? And devaluing the amount that creates so many generational problems of folks not being able to um, own wealth and pass down wealth, and that they would have been able to, that they would have had the money to have, but they weren't allowed to do that. At that same time, where the country was denying Black people, I'm not saying people of color, I'm saying specifically Black people, the ability to amass wealth, and not even amass wealth, just own a home. They were giving massive loans to immigrants from other countries, right? The same time they were giving immigrants from other countries to come to Middle America and all of these places to have wealth and to have a house, and all of these FHA loans that weren't available to Black people. This person saying post World War II, yeah, there were folks coming home from war that fought for this country. Some of their brothers stood next to them and died, and it's not like they were like seen as heroes in war. They were also seen as folks, second class citizens, even as folks that were in war. And then when they came back, they weren't allowed to even own homes and all of these things. So this is why we talk about reparations. But to move away from that, because I feel like I said about that, the question which I really liked that somebody brought up was saying that basically the main issue is culture, right? That breeds certain crime and all of these things. And I 1,000% agree. I've toyed with, I'm big on folks having free speech, but I really, really, really don't like how, because I actually identify as non-binary, but when people see me this, I'm a Black man, right? And I'm more at risk of violent crime in this city than a lot of people. And it's been normalized to hear on the radio, hear all types of artists talk about killing specifically Black men. You guys have heard this in songs and all this. This has been normalized, right? So I think that that's a great point to bring up, that the culture of the record labels, that the culture of the movies and TV has allowed this. And, I took media literacy in college, and the average person isn't able to look at a portion of media and see what that media is trying to communicate to them and get into their mind, and when you have folks that you'll see it now, parents raising their kids, the easiest thing to do is just give them a phone. And when folks get in that habit, they're learning. I'm sure that there are many people who listen to your podcast. They might listen to you all talk more than they hear their wife talk, or more than they listen to their son, right? They might in their commute or whatever. I'm just being serious. There's podcasts I listen to some podcasters more than I even talk to my own dad, right? And this is the thing that's happening in media all around. Some folks are listening to rap music, and they're listening to, and I don't want to be somebody who just demonizes rap music, because I think that is also an easy trap to dunk on, right? But I do think that there is a culture that has normalized hate in all types of forms. And a lot of the things that happens in the music is folks are spreading hate, and it's done in a creative way. So it sounds good, but it's actually not good for us. And that's why I have used my platform to creatively and passionately fight for love, and say it even when it seems awkward, even when folks say you don't seem serious, even when it sounds like, oh, there's no real plan behind that. I've specifically fought for love, because I say, hey, the folks who are fighting for hate, the folks who are fighting for gang violence, the folks who are fighting for shooting, they don't stop. They don't work. They make it look cool. They're wearing all of this stuff. They're always in your face. So for me, as somebody who, wants to actually fight for love, it's about doubling and tripling down on that, and being super vocal on that, and calling it out when it happens. So I definitely think that, as an artist, in all of my music, I don't curse in my music, right? That's not going to solve everything, but the idea is that we need more folks that are willing to stand up in love and say, hey, this is the right way. We need more positive role models, and there's a reason that they specifically put negative role models out there. If you guys really want to go deep into it, I'll say it, right? That people don't like to talk about the prison industrial complex. but it's a real thing. Some of the biggest contracts you can get as a contractor with the city or state government are corrections contracts. A lot of folks don't know this. In the school system, some of the contracts are harder because the city actually deals with their own workers. But in the prisons, there's a lot of contracts that folks can get, and so it behooves them to have folks that are. There's some people who are mentally disturbed that are famous, and they're famous, and they get to lead lots of people, and they're leading a lot of these people straight into jail. I say all the time, if I ever meet 50 Cent, one of the first things I'll say is like, yo, how many people do you think you've done more to put people in jail than any cop, than any police department? You alone as an artist, and I won't say you alone, but you with the entire music industry that has platformed you, you're pushing people into crime. You're making it seem cool and normalizing it. And that to me isn't okay. And yeah, so that's what the Love platform is about, fighting back against that and calling out how these people are. A lot of these people, I believe they're cops. Like, I think some of these rappers are just straight up like CIA operatives or FBI operatives or all of these things that are there. When we even talk about going into COINTELPRO, right? The counterintelligence program, where they specifically put folks in activist movements or in progressive communities to kind of divert the attention in different ways. I think that's what's done with a lot of these artists, these major artists. I'm like, where did this guy come from? He has $1 million behind him to tell people to join a gang. Where does this guy come from? She has $2 million behind her to tell women to, not love the person that they had a child with. This is a real thing that's going on that I have to deal with in my community, and I'm trying to the best way I know how. So yeah.
I just want to let you know, I was doing a lot of laughing, but I wasn't laughing at you. I'm laughing because you said that people watch the podcast rather than talking to other people. I think the people that watch our podcast the most are some of the people that hate us. I mean, we just had one of the trolls that said he hates us so much, but he wants to come on the podcast. So I got to laugh at that. But you're absolutely right. What's interesting, when I was in college, I was a history major, and I studied. One of the courses I had was Urban American Blacks, and it was the question was it capitalism or racism that kept blacks from having mass wealth, right? And it was very interesting. But if you look at history, right, after the Civil War, the nucleus of the black family really started to come back, and they were really thriving in this country around the time until the time of the 50s. So around the time of the 50s, it's exactly what you're talking about, where we had white flight. The whites in cities would start leaving and going to suburbs. And the blacks couldn't go to the suburbs because the price of the homes and the real estate was so affordable for whites, but they made it so unaffordable for blacks, forced them, kept them into the city. And they made everything so astronomical, and eventually moving into housing projects. So I think you're spot on. And then, of course, when we have Lyndon B. Johnson, we had the mothers marry the government rather than stay with the fathers. So that was another attributing fact. So if you look at history, these systematic things that were put in place really held down black families. It's not that black people are bad. We don't believe that at all. When we doing crime out there, doing policing, I grew up in a black neighborhood myself, and so you see that black people just were held down by these systems that haven't been corrected. So I think that we have to correct these systems now, because I don't necessarily just believe it's just reparations, because after the Civil War, I think the black nucleus family was doing pretty well. But I think you bring up some great points. I really appreciate that. So I think it's quite interesting. I just want to have a little fun. You had, from what I read, correct me if I'm wrong, a 13-year-old kid running your campaign. I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. Like, so what is this about? Like, is this legit? Like, was your brother? Or like, how does this work?
Yeah. So basically, they try to keep me out. And again, thank you. I'm going to clap my hands and thank you guys so much for actually having me on your platform. They try to make sure that I'm not out there, because just as passionate as I am talking about my issues, I am holding these folks accountable. And I promise you can ask anyone in their office, their worst nightmare is having to have a open forum with me, because I the people talk to me, I know, and I come through super prepared and ready to speak. So I'm really happy to be here. One of the reasons I had a 13-year-old is like, what can we do to help not only stand out, right, in the race and let folks know, but this was when I ran for mayor in 2021 that I had this. The kid who was 13 then is now 17. Um, this kid called me and he said, "Yo, Paperboy, I'm working with this other candidate." Actually, they DM'd me, and the person had a bunch of pictures with like a older man. So I'm thinking it's an old man who wants to come and talk to me about politics. And I get the call, and it's a FaceTime, and it's a little kid on the other side of the phone. And I'm like, he's like, wait, wait, wait. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I know you think this is a joke, but just hear me out. I'm like, I still don't know. I'm like, okay, am I waiting to speak to your dad? You have your dad's phone? And he's like,
This kid.
I'm like, who is this kid on my phone? And he's like, there's this candidate that I want you to work with that's uptown that I really think would be cool. And I'm working with him and all this stuff. And I was like, I was just so impressed that I was like, okay, what did they have you doing? And he's like, well, since I'm young, they don't really have me helping, but they said they're gonna let me do some stuff. So I'm just making calls to people. And I was like, all right, that's it. You're gonna come work with my campaign and we're gonna find something for you to do. That was about 7 months later. I ran for mayor. And I told him, I was like, okay, he would call me like every week, like, hey, am I going to get to help? I'm going to get to help. I say, don't worry, we're going to figure out something. So when I ran for mayor, a big part of what I want to do is to increase voter turnout. We talked about the city council and the issues with the city council. The reason that most of them are there is because no one shows up and votes. So few people show up and vote. It's just their little club that they get to come out. And I'm not even getting into the cheating that they do in the voting booth, but it's just their little club to get to they get for them to come out. So 600 people voted for you. So now you get to be accountable for over $2 billion in the city budget as a city council member. So a big problem is the lack of voter turnout. That's why I said, especially from younger folks. So I said, you know what? Let me invest in the young people now. Him and his friends, they won't even be able to vote for another 4 years, 5 years at that time, right? But I said, hey, you know what? I know that they are the future, and let me back that up with real positions in my campaign. So I purposefully did that to help create a culture of voting for young people. And this guy was already young and interested in politics, but I said, let me actually bring you a part of my team to show that young people can be involved, that they do have a voice, and we're doing so much to the youth, but their voice isn't represented at all. And I actually helped to create and advance the idea of a youth city council, which would basically be a city council that is for the youth, that the same way we have our current city council, but we have one for the youth. They don't have any necessarily legislative power, but what they do have is the ability of a bully pulpit to kind of talk about issues that are important to them. And I was working with this on another candidate that was disabled, named Harriet Hines, who I loved, and she passed away while we were working on this. So it's something that's super important to me, getting young people involved, and it was a fun thing. And now this dude has worked for so many candidates. He's been having so many opportunities. Now sitting Congress members pay him. He makes money working for sitting Congress members as a consultant in all of this, based on the work that he's done for my campaign. And he's worked for some of the most known politicians in the city after that. So it is really a point of pride for me, the people that work with me getting opportunities to to advance their career in different ways. And now this kid already has an extensive career in public service and in politics, before he's even graduated high school. And so for me, it's about doing stuff like that and kind of saying, not just giving lip service to saying we want to support young people and having them involved, but in real time, platforming them and putting them in a position to where they have to learn. And they're like, yo, I'm learning more at this one meeting than I did in all my time in school. And like, that to me is really important. And yeah, now even getting to watch this young man grow to being 17 and all of the opportunities that he's had, and the other people in his school that he's been able to influence. So it's not just about me. I get to pass that on, and he gets to pass it on to other people in his community. So It's a fun thing, and it was just funny, which is kind of like the idea behind the clown thing. I didn't wear the clown face this morning, and but
I was disappointed. I was hoping to come out with at least.
That was actually my next question. It was like, I was like, tell us about the video, dude. Like, that was honestly, I watched the video 100 times. I shared it on social media. I keep sharing it because it's honestly, it's a great video, dude. And it's like, there's a lot going on there. Like, so if you could just walk us through that video a little bit, I'd love to hear like your ideas behind it.
I mean, I wish I would have started this conversation with kind of my impetus on why I'm running and the biggest issues with the political class in our city, because there's some major issues here. Like, the people that they think that are good guys are really not good guys. They're just really good at looking like good guys, but there are some really bad good guys. And they are anti-democratic. They talk about Trump, and they talk about Trump subverting democracy and all these things, which is happening in real time. But these folks are doing the same thing. And the only thing that they benefit from is that there's a lack of local media. Since the internet has came out and it kind of wiped out a lot of local media, and a few rich people and billionaires own a lot of the local media, especially the local media that covers politics. It's all owned by some very rich people, a few very rich people that swing things in the way that they want. So it's super corrupt, and kind of what I wanted to do was kind of show how these folks will, if you're not a part of their club, they'll box you out so you don't have a voice. They'll make sure that you're not invited to any of the relevant forums and all of these things. They'll try to paint you as unserious. And then the biggest thing that ends up being a problem for most New Yorkers, most working class New Yorkers, is right now for mayor, the litmus test on if someone is a viable candidate or not is the fundraising, how much money that they fundraised, which to me is the most backwards thing, because the average person in this city, it's not in their budget to donate to a political campaign. The people that I'm fighting for in my campaign, most of them, it's not in their budget right now. Their money is going to rent. Their money is going to, I want to go on a date. Their money is, I want to I'm just trying to have food for tomorrow night, right? It's not, oh, let me donate $30 to this political campaign. So for me, it's such a backwards thing. And then even something like the matching funds program, where it's supposed to give candidates like me a opportunity. The matching funds program is supposed to say, okay, upstart candidates, we're going to help them have money so it gives them a fighting chance to actually be able to run for office. But that's not what it does. What it actually ends up doing is giving more money to the folks that already have it. When Eric Adams ran for mayor, the city gave him over $2 million to run for mayor. I'm like, Eric Adams is already elected official. He already has a bunch of Democratic donors. He already has a bunch of supporters. Why are we giving Eric Adams $2 million to run for mayor? Of course, he's going to get more votes than me if you give him $2 million. In my campaign, we spent $2,000. We've got over 70,000 votes and we spent $2,000. I'm going up against somebody who has gotten $2 million. This campaign, we haven't spent any money. You can look it up. I've spent $0 on this campaign. Zorhan Mandami, who is
he's coming on next Wednesday, Zorhan.
He's calling himself a socialist candidate, right? The city is paying him close to $4 million to run for mayor. And I have not heard him once. Call out the issues with the matching funds program. I've not heard him once call out the issues with not platforming, only platforming candidates based on the amount of money that they've raised. This is a problem. And all of these people are terrible leaders because they can't call out the problems that are actually the root cause of the issue. The reason that we have leaders that don't understand us and that aren't accountable to us is because they're more accountable to folks that can donate to them, that can give them a bunch of money. And that's why we have folks that are basically not working for us. So when I ask these candidates, I'm saying, hey, how do you rationalize saying that, oh, you're a more viable candidate because you've focused on raising millions of dollars and the city is giving you $4 million to run for mayor? That makes you a more viable candidate? Or does me, somebody who I have with my own money, in this city against all odds, have run a community center, a brick and mortar community center for over 5 years, have run a successful mutual aid organization where that has spawned others, have done so much community work and events, have had some of the largest protests in New York City history, and have run competitive campaigns in some of the most difficult races in the city. So when I run for office, I'm not just running to where nobody can see me and make it easy. I'm running against 28-year incumbents who did this. My first time I ran for office against Nydia Velasquez, got the most votes of any challenger in 2 decades, and that with the least amount of money. Right, I spent $20 in that campaign, and it's because of we're not trying to take the easy route, and we're trying to call out the
18% of the vote, and you spent $20.
We spent $20. She spent 400,000. Right, we spent $20.
You got 18%, right?
Exactly. I think it was closer to like 15% that first time.
Okay. All right,
but I honestly, that's what they said. I honestly believe I won that election. As delusional I am, I believe I won that election. There was a lot of shady stuff going on, and I talked to other elected officials off the record that gave me tips to that. But that is what it is. So yeah, that's a big problem for me. Is like I wanted to call out that these folks are clowns. Like you can't pretend that you're a candidate that's a socialist or that you're supporting all people or all these things, or you're even a candidate that is about the people when you're still upholding a system that says, oh, the most viable candidate is who raises the most money. And I called out the folks from the New York Times. I'm like, wait, you're saying that these are the candidates for mayor. Not only do I have, and I'm not saying this is the only thing that matters, but I'm like, wait, I have more followers than all of these people, half of them combined. I had more followers than them. Some of them, maybe they've caught up. I'm not checking their pages every day. Like I have more followers than these people online. In real life, more people know me than these people, and yet they're the more serious candidates because 80 people donated to their campaign or 200 people donated to their campaign money. So that's what makes them more viable. To me, I feel like we need to focus less on the money because that is what got us in this situation in the first place. So I have no problem calling that out and literally naming these candidates as their jokes. They're clown. I feel like Zorhan, clown. Eric Adams, clown. What was the other who else is running? They're clowns.
Scott Stringer, Lander, Jessica Ramos.
Oh my goodness, clown.
It's
clown,
a circus.
Clown. It's like Brad Lander is you know what I mean? And I don't just leave it at that because it seems like it's a weak personal attack. So that's why I really try to show all of the ways that like they could easily say, hey, I'm not doing this mayoral forum until we at least have the candidates that have shown that they are a real part of this process to be a part of it. For them to not have Paperboy Prince a part, I use myself as a litmus test because I'm like, wait, if you're not going to allow me, then what about all the candidates coming behind me? It's not just about me. It's about all the candidates. What about the single mom or the police officer that wants to run for office? And he might not be supported by the police union. He might not be supported by all these other groups that boost them up. What about them running for office? But because they don't have a bunch of funding, because they don't have a bunch of donors, they're not going to be even invited to speak. And this is my problem. All of these Democratic organizations, clowns, Working Families Party, clowns, Democratic Party, clowns, right? I see these labor unions and all these things, and they don't even care about their members because they'd rather have folks that they're going to lose anyway. You still going to lose. Look, all these people talking about all this like, oh yeah, well, we can't have them because they're not a serious candidate. I'm like, love, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're not going to be mayor. So why are you talking about me not being included? Because, oh, we need to have serious. First of all, I'm more serious, more educated, more capable, and have been around longer than most of these people anyway. And second of all, they're only there because they were handpicked and boosted up by a bunch of donors that use them because they're easy to be controlled. There's a video specifically, and this isn't my, I'm just speaking on him because you said you mentioned it's coming on next. There's that video of Zorhan. We're like, he's a perfect example. I'm like, wait, I never heard of you or seen you in the community before the DSA propped you up to run. And I know for a fact, because I was in the DSA at one point and I left, that they go and they handpick people. They boost them, folks that don't have leadership experience, folks that don't have much community experience or political experience. They boost them, put all their money and funding behind them and say, hey, I'm a working champion leader and I do all these things. And when actuality, no, you haven't. You've been boosted up. If you're, and I haven't heard him speak on this, and I'm going to do more videos and topics on this, but I'm like, wait, your mom is rich in India, right? She's like one of the richest people in India, or one of the richest filmmakers in India. And in India, they have a serious caste system problem or racism problem that is real, that folks bring over with them to this country. And so I haven't heard him speak anything about that. And that to me, that honestly worries me, because if you come from that type of background, and it's not like you're saying you're from the bottom of the bottom in India, you're from the top of the top. And these people have been some of the worst people to folks lower in the caste system in India. Haven't heard him speak anything about that. And then has said that nepotism has been, a reason why he's gotten where he is. And then there's the video where he says, I'll say anything to make folks like me, or something. I don't want to completely misquote, but there's a video where he says, I know how to say what needs to be said to get folks to like me. There's a video where he's using the fake African accent, right? Like where he's like, oh yes, I really think that this will be good. And I'm like, wait, one day you got a fake African accent, next day you don't. So these people are, and I have stories for all of them, but these people are clowns. Andrew Cuomo, when I first ran for mayor, when I first ran, not for mayor, for Congress, I did a song, and you guys can look it up. It's called "I Got the Governor Mad," Paperboy Prince, and it's a conversation where Andrew Cuomo is responding to something I said, and then I clip that and I turn it into a song. It's like, I got the governor mad. He said I'm too wild. He said I'm too rad. I talk for the people. You talk for the man. I got a list. We made it demands. They spread a hate. But, that's that. I call these people out in song. My city council member, Jennifer Gutierrez. She's like, oh, I'm a working mom. I'm a mom, so I really know about what kids need. And then she voted to help cut over $400 million from the public schools. And so I dropped it, and then was getting supported by, family groups and teachers unions and all these things. And I called them out. I said, this is clown stuff. How can you do it? You're just doing it because that's who the Democratic Party told you to support. And I dropped the song, "While you cut money from the schools. Do you want these kids to be fools? 300 million. What did you do while you cut money from the schools? Council lady, I'm talking to you. Boom. Paperboy Prince had to shake up the room. Are you reading the bill? I said, are you reading the bills? What did you do? She literally had to admit that, oh yeah, I wasn't reading the bills. I dropped that song. I dropped the Eric Adams, "Get Out of My Room," when the video came with Eric Adams, and it was silly and people didn't know. And this was at a time where the average voter, the average person in New York, they're not following this stuff. They're not following politics still. Most people don't care about the mayor's race. They're not going to care until June 15 something, June 20 something. Right now, nobody cares, right? And at that time, when I dropped this song about Eric Adams, people didn't even know who Eric Adams was. A lot of folks didn't know. I was like, guys, this guy has a real shot at being our next mayor. And I made this song to kind of hip folks to that. And it was Eric Adams, get out of my room. What you doing in my room? Eric Adams, get out of my room. What you doing in my room? And to highlight that video and how he's saying, kind of saying, hey, you can find bullets under your kid's toothbrush. There might be a grenade in their underwear and all this stuff. So it's
or maybe a couple of joints.
right.
Cracking the baby doll. Cracking the baby doll.
Right. Look, there's a baby doll. It could be some crack fight in the baby doll. Which we all know that a baby doll is a great hiding place for a crack pipe. So I will give him that one. But
you give him kudos.
But yeah, so that's kind of my thought is like, I have no problem calling out any politician on either side of the aisle. I'll probably hyper focus on some of the Democratic politicians specifically because they claim to champion certain issues. And then in actuality, we have the proof that we don't. And myself, as someone who's more on the ground, who has more access to these folks' records and their staff, and just gets to be face to face with them more than the average citizen, I feel it behooves me to call them out and talk about it as much as I can. So that's where the clowns are.
I love it. First of all, they are clowns. And John and I were talking offline. I was like, listen, I'm a firm believer that there's a correlation between humor and intelligence. I'm telling you, this guy is super intelligent. To pull that off, it was hysterical. But I was like, it's a big message. And I was like, he's definitely intelligent. And you're spot on. Spot on, clowns. I mean, it's sad that, you live in New York City, and it's like, who do you choose from? You're at a circus, and like, you watch it. Let me pick the best performance. And that's really what it is. And Eric Adams, he's a character. He puts on the best performance. You got great stamina. Is it cool if we keep going a couple more? Hey, we're 2.5 hours into it. We're having a
Let's
great
do it.
time.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do a
Awesome.
couple more. I mean,
Well, there's a we spoke a lot about public safety, immigration. We're talking about reparations. We spoke about a lot of stuff. We didn't talk too much about education. There's a question here from our audience, and I think he's asking the question. He asked very professionally, so which I'll allow it. I think he asked it because you said that you identify as non-binary. I did read that. I was interested about that. So he says, uncomfortable question. This comes from Logic's Finest. Uncomfortable question, sir. Do you support drag queen story time for little children? Do you support biological males in women's sports? Do you support books about those in schools for children? What are your thoughts?
that's a great question. So, the specifics of the question was, do I support Drag Time Story Hour? Is that the question?
Yeah,
So-
it's Do you support drag story hour? How do you feel about biological males and girls sports? And I think there was another part to it also. I said,
So to take those
Yeah.
first two parts, because there's a lot there.
sure.
With Drag Time Story Hour, that's an interesting one. I always was confused why folks were bothered by that, simply because if a parent wants to take their kid to the gun range, that's their kid. If they want to do that, they can do that. If a parent wants to take their kid to be, a wrestler and start wrestling young, that's their prerogative. They can do that. If a parent wants to take their kid to a drag time, a drag show or something like that, that's their prerogative. They can do that. And if it's in a environment that's curated for kids, I feel like that's their prerogative. They can do that. I have a friend who's a mom, a young mom, and she was telling me about how much her son loves Travis Scott, which Travis Scott is a artist that he has some explicit lyrics. He's also the artist that had uh, several people die at his concert. I don't know if you guys remember this some years ago in Texas. He had a concert and people got trampled and all of this stuff at his concert. So, and we were just talking about it, and I was like, oh, I always wondered how people that were parents would have their kids at a Travis Scott concert. And I'm like, oh, that would be you. And so my point is saying that parents are allowed to put their children in the situations they want. So if they want to go to Drag Time Story Hour, I don't think as mayor, it's my job to say, hey, you shouldn't be allowed to take your kid to Drag Time Story Hour. I think that's an overreach of the government. Now, as far as if someone's saying in a school, because usually these things were happening at private locations, sometimes at libraries, so that I understand. And now, if someone's saying at a school where they don't want their kid to be privy to that, as far as I'm aware, that's not happening at school during school hours. But they don't want their kid to be privy to that. I think that's also a parent's right to say, hey, I don't want my kid to be a part of this, and they don't have to. My parents, like I said, are pastors. They were not a fan of, back when I was in school, it was teaching about alternative lifestyles, which is saying, hey, some people are straight, some people are gay, and all of this stuff. My parents didn't want the teachers teaching me about sexual health. They wanted to teach me. They wanted to have a biblical conversation with it. They didn't want someone that they didn't know teaching me and telling me about it. And they just felt like it was just kind of weird to even have that conversation. I completely understand that. And I'm happy that they did, because now I get my family's view on it before I get the world's view. And I think that's the main thing. I think when it comes down to parenting, a lot of parents are leaving so much up to media, like we were saying before about the culture, leaving so much up to media, leaving so much up to schools, when it really is, you need to be focused on your own family and give your family you got to give your family the vision that you want before sending them out to the world, and then the world telling them what they want, and then you kind of shaping that after. So that's why the universal basic income to me was a cool thing, because maybe that's extra time. Instead of dad having to work a second job or mom having to work a second job and having less time, you can spend that time actually with your children, with your family, and telling them how you want them to be. So yeah, for me, I don't have a problem with that. As far as the I do feel like, and I know there are a lot of queer people that feel like this, that in some places, in some places, it is a little bit forced, right? Some of the queer issues and trans issues have been forced into some things that I personally feel like are not done in just. And I don't think that's from necessarily the queer people. I think that's a media thing, that where it gets, some things get like forced in there. I kind of lost my train of thought because I had a really good thing to say about that.
I know,
But yeah,
I no, listen, I get where you're going, and I agree with you totally. It's definitely the government shouldn't overreach in parental rights. Like if you want to take your kids to Drag Story Hour, it's your prerogative. I think that the problem was, and what was happening across New York, is politicians were funding it and then demonizing anyone that asked a question about it or was like, hey, I don't want my kids there. And it's like, well, why not? And I'm like, well, I don't take my kids to a strip club. Like, I'm not going to take them to a drag club. Like, I don't want to sexualize my child. And I find it weird that the government's getting involved in this. If like you just woke up one day and you said, and it's the same thing, like the rationale with they're banning books. I remember there was a big thing that Governor DeSantis was banning books in Florida. And I'm like, he's actually not banning the book. You could go to the store and buy the book for your child. He's just saying that this isn't appropriate to be in a school. And I agree with it. And the media has a way on both sides of taking an issue and not really telling the truth. You have the left media telling you that Governor DeSantis is banning books and he's burning books. And he's like, no, he's pulling it out of the school. Let's have a real argument. And then you have the right who's painting some of these books to not really be what they were either. And so it's like, and then we're all left here ripping each other to pieces over something that's really maybe shouldn't even be an issue, and the government should just stay the hell out of it. and I think that's, so like I agree with you. It should be a parental issue, but my thing is the government should also stay out of it. Like, I don't believe we should be sexualizing youth at a young age, and we should not be funding this out of tax dollars. And there are books that I believe, public service. We're public servants for a reason. We serve the public. We should bend to the will of the people. And if the people are telling us this is not an age appropriate book for a child, I would agree. There was some books out there where they were showing horrible acts, sexual acts that like, why would a 6-year-old need to read about this?
exactly.
I'm like,
Exactly.
so, and I think that's the whole, I think that was like the whole pushback on it.
What I will say as a caveat is that for most of I think it's a case by case basis, right? When it comes to like books and stuff like that, I wouldn't put a broad brush on anything that mentions trans people or queer people. I think it's a case by case basis of like you said. I think there was recently some lady who had some really weird stuff in a book, some author, but really weird stuff in a kid's book, and it got called out. And I think that stuff, obviously, there's no place for that. On the flip side is in reality, in real time, like this stuff doesn't go backwards, it only goes forward. So there are trans people that live in New York City. So many people. There are queer people that live here, gay people that live here. There are people that are straight people that like to swing and have their wife do different things and like all different things, right? So now when it comes to sexuality being in books, I'm more about, again, I prefer hopefully parents being the first people to have the conversation with the kids about that. But when it comes to just different representations of different people, I think that that's okay and normal just because there are those people that exist, in this city, and we need people to like understand how to unify and come together. And that's what I mean when I talk about love. It's like, hey, these people exist. How can we make it so folks understand that people exist and do it from a place of love and not just being worried and hating somebody because they're different than you? Because it's really, really easy to hate or dislike somebody because they're different than you or because they present themselves differently or whatever. So for me, and this is something I try to constantly challenge myself on, is like caring about people that are different and have different perspectives. The second part of this question, which is I like, because I just was having this conversation last night before going to bed with before going to bed was about, you mentioned biological men in women's sports.
Yep.
And
Yep.
my mind was recently just changed on this issue because for a long time I was, I'm an athlete. I played sports. I played soccer. I played basketball. I just started playing pickleball last summer. I played basketball last night. I go to the gym daily.
Pickleball, good stuff.
Yeah, pickleball is a lot of
I
fun.
play that at the RV sites.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. And I play co-ed. Sometimes I'll play co-ed pickleball and I'll play co-ed basketball, and I'll see the gap of difference. There's some girls that play college basketball. They're better than most of the dudes there. And then there's some guys that are, haven't played and they're getting beat by girls. And there's some guys that didn't play high school basketball, but they're much better than a girl that didn't play high school basketball. What's my point? I looked into being a trans athlete now at the collegiate level, for example, as an NCAA, with the NCAA. And basically, to be a trans athlete in the NCAA, you have to be on hormones for over a year before you can qualify. So that is a lot of stuff going into your body. That is a lot of body changes. I don't know if you've seen somebody who's been on like these hormones for a year, but like you'll start to like little like titties can start to form. And I didn't use the right word there, but you get what I'm saying. Your body goes through all these changes. So it is a thing. It doesn't all of a sudden, change all of your biology, but it is a thing. So it's not the easiest thing to do, but I know in the high school level, there's not some of these same requirements, right? And so one of the basically saying that the thing that makes it that my biggest problems with trans folks being in these sports are one, I think that having women's sports, this is another one we could have a whole podcast on. But I think that one, having women's sports is for folks who have the body of a woman from that were born with that biologically. I think that there is something to be said about protecting that from them, because women are often seen as more docile and more agreeable. So it is potentially easier for their sports to get the rug ripped from under them than male sports. Men might be more likely to fight back and push back against these things in a more aggressive way. So that's one part, is the protecting the women's sports. The other part is judging transness and queerness, because now by doing this, if you want to put trans people in women's sports, for example, it gets difficult because now you have bodies of like the NCAA, which isn't a queer body or people that understand this. Now they are judging the transness of a person. So now, and which is something that a lot of queer people don't like, that now you have this outside body with some school board or something saying, hey, you're not trans enough, to actually be a part of the sport, which causes so many other problems socially that ends up being, I know for a lot of queer people who don't understand sports, a lot of gay and queer people aren't into sports as much. They're just about equality and equity. They don't understand that you're opening up the floodgates to have a bunch of bodies, a bunch of school boards and all of these things be the judge of transness and queerness in youth. And to me, that is a very slippery slope that isn't good. So that's the reasons that I kind of don't like it. But now my mind has been kind of shifted to say, well, if we want women to be at the same level as men in sports, which there's many sports where women are, more capable than men or have better bodies for it. But I think that what happens if it's just no more gender restrictions on sports? What happens is that maybe for a period of time, there will be way less women in sports. But maybe what will happen is women will become that much more, they'll become better at sports, right? Because they're being grouped in with everyone. I don't know what this looks like. I'm just saying that I feel like, maybe it's time to revisit, should we have men and women's sports, or should we just have sports? And just the best people, whether it's a woman or man, be a part of it and all of that. I think there can still be stuff for just women and all of that. I think it's an interesting one. That's one of those like future problems that it doesn't, because also I was my next door neighbor was a college coach and coached college basketball. I grew up around NBA players and all this stuff. And I remember kids getting held back, kids that were completely smartest kid in the class, but their parents would hold them back a grade so they have a better chance at getting scholarships for basketball, better chance at making these teams and all that. My point is saying that in youth sports, parents get very, very competitive and do so many things to give their child an extra advantage. So what I worry about is, even when we do let trans people play in women's sports, is that once it gets gamed out to the level of competitiveness that exists in youth sports, it could be that all of the women's teams are now with trans women. Because if you're University of Connecticut and you could have 5 people from the transfer portal that are trans women, instead of having 5 freshmen that are coming in that might be great, I don't know. So that's kind of why the two sides of it. I think that it's a very interesting situation. Like, I think that there's interesting things on both sides. Like, I've spoken to women specifically about this. That's who I was speaking to about it last night, and they were like, but why can't just women start playing with men, and then like the women get better? I'm like, okay, we can game that out and see how it goes, and maybe that's what'll be what it takes for folks to again say, hey, we need women's sports and we need men's sports. But I play co-ed sports regularly, and I think that there is a case to say, hey, let's just have everyone. Let's just let there be sport. No more gender designation. Let there be sport. So yeah, but this is one that I'm like, I would rather the people decide on. It's not me, and this is kind of like all of my ideas, and it's about the people's decision. It's not just about what I want or what I think is best, because ultimately that's limited, right? So yeah, that's
well, I tell you this. I spend a majority of my lifetime doing martial arts, and I love it. All different types, all different forms, different disciplines. Just like you love art, I believe martial arts is art. Right now, I spend majority of my time doing jujitsu, and it's a great self-defense aspect to it. But I also do it for the sport. I compete myself, and I can tell you this: I never try to hurt anyone. I'm always mindful of the people I train with, make sure I don't hurt them. I don't want me to hurt me, or I want to continue to train. But I will say this: I do train with women too. When I grapple or wrestle with women, my approach is much different, and I grapple with women much different. I'm very mindful to make sure I don't hurt them. I don't put the same amount of pressure. I keep it in my mind. I constantly move every couple of seconds, so I'm not applying pressure. There is a vast difference. Don't get me wrong. There are some outliers where I've wrestled with some women like, wow, this is going to give me a fight today. But the overwhelming majority, honestly, I do change the game, and I try to, work on technique and stuff like that. There is a vast difference, and I think we have to be mindful of that. In my opinion, I don't think that biological males should be in sports, especially contact sports, for those reasons. Listen, we're going on close to 3 hours. I think this is a hell of an interview. I've had a lot of fun. This is a great job. Let's have a little fun. Tell us about Paperboy Prince, besides art, besides love, besides running for mayor, running for president. What else do you do? What's some passions? I know you play ball. We're going to have to get that together. I was watching you play with Andrew Yang. It was pretty funny. So what else? What else?
I'm not Andrew Yang, bro. So I'm just letting you know.
they were playing like horse.
Hey, look, I'm ready to go. So I was serious about the basketball thing. I'm ready to go. And like, a last thing about the topic we were just speaking on is like, I think that one is a sensitive issue for all the reasons that I said. I gave my reasons why I don't think it should be, because one, for protection even of trans people, and then also for the protection of women's sports. So I totally get that. And look, I'm the type that when I'm playing, I'm trying to go 100%. I'm not trying to let down. I know a lot of guys like that, and they're like, and they might even, in sports, you seek out a mismatch, right? It's like, okay, there's a mismatch here. I'm going to exploit the mismatch. I'm not going to try to back up from that. So, and I'm just interested to see like what happens, if we let it happen and see, because I know that when I played sports, uh, and I started playing with folks older than me, I got better by playing up. And so who knows if that'll happen. I do think that there's a big body mismatch. I think, like you said, in contact sports and all of these things, it ends up being, but even non-contact sports, there are already like implicit advantages there. So I think that some folks though don't get it. If you don't play sports and you don't know, you really don't get it. So the only way to get it and see it, I think, is to let some of it play out and it'll speak for itself. But so yeah, that's that. But as far as other thing that I'm into, I love to write. So I'm a writer. I've written 2 books. One of them is here with me. It's called Safeguarding America's Destiny. And it's basically about kind of, my policies and ideas. So that's something I've done. And then I have another book, The Unconventional Political Odyssey. That's a lot of photos and screenshots from inside my phone. It's like personal text messages and DMs and all of these things, photos that from my first like 3 or 4 campaigns. It's like a really interesting book, and it tells a lot of stories through photos. But I'm, passionate about just having fun, like hanging out, running the gallery. Street performing is before COVID. So this is something that I would do regularly before COVID. It was just like a fun way to get outside, see people, be in the community, be on the street, and perform that music and art. Like that to me is like when people talk about what they love about New York City, I feel like that's one of the things, the spontaneous art that you can see in the streets, the different styles and fashion and all these things. That's something that I'm passionate about too. Uh, just fashion and design specifically. That's one of the things that drew me into politics was design, and like how when we design things a certain way, how that people react to it, and what type of mind frame it puts them in. So that's why I'm like super about redesigning things and how that can reshape things. Um, so yeah, that's stuff that's super important to me, and yeah, spreading love. And I want to say like this has been such a fun and interesting conversation, and I think we got to talk about a lot of different things, and I appreciate you all, sharing your views and not holding back, because I'm the type, and I wish I would have even doubled down on this harder to start. Say, hey, don't hold back, give me the rawest view, represent that. And I appreciate the folks in the comments. I wasn't reading the comments, but I saw some of the ones that popped up here. I appreciate folks sharing how they feel and their opinions, because this is what it's about. And for me, I'm a consistency person. This is my 5th or 6th time running for office. And I've made the ballot every single time. We've gotten the most votes per dollar every single time I've run. I've helped plenty of people run for office. I've helped police officers run for office, teachers, students, all types of people run for office. This time I'm helping 8 other candidates run for office, first-time candidates run for office. And I do this not as something to promote or talk about all the time. It's something that's just like a passionate thing, something I would do for free. This is a volunteer project for me. So I do all of this for free out of love for the community, love for the city, the country, and the planet. So that's why I'm here, and I'll continue to be here, continue to be doing this work. Part of how they feel like they can shut me out is, oh, if we just ignore them for long enough, they'll go away and Paperboy will stop showing up. But we keep being here. Our support is growing. We're getting more creative. I'm getting more knowledgeable. I've gotten less press and attention than my first mayoral campaign, but I'm even more knowledgeable and have so much more experience since that time. So I'm like even more confident and going into this, and excited about the future, and excited that you guys would even saw something in our campaign video that stuck out to you, and then wanted to have me on your podcast. So this is dope. I hope that I can come back and talk again sometime, and like maybe we can find some dope issues to talk about. So
Anytime. Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. Anytime.
okay, perfect. Because you know what? there are times where stuff happens, obviously, as it relates to public safety, NYPD. There are stuff that are hot button issues that pop up. And I think it would be great to talk about sometimes specifically on your platform and us to bounce around on those issues. And then I'm also YouTubing too. So I used to make a bunch of YouTube videos back when I was like a kid, right? Like in 2008 and 2007, like I was at the beginning of YouTube, I was making videos, but I stopped for a while and went to other platforms. And so now I'm going to either be starting a new channel or making more videos on my channel, Paperboy Prince. So, so yeah, if anyone, anybody watching want to check that out, you can at Paperboy the Prince on Instagram, and paperboyprince.com is my website, but paperboy.nyc actually right now is the website. So you go to paperboy.nyc. It's cool. My whole documentary is there too. So there's a lot of stuff I left out and that I kind of hinted at. But if you want to look at more, there's a whole documentary on my website for free that was, critically acclaimed. And yeah, it's just being made available for free. It's on some streaming platforms. So right now on paperboy.nyc, you can just go right there, watch the whole documentary. It's about 20 minutes long. It's the condensed version. And it's really good at seeing what goes on inside of a political campaign, an outsider political campaign, and how we kind of did things. And so, yeah, that would be a great resource for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, all of Paperboy Prince's social media handles, his YouTube channel, his website are in the links below wherever you're watching or listen. So check that out. I watched the documentary too. It was good. So you go to his website, check that out, and then like I said, his YouTube videos there. We subscribe. So we'll definitely be following you. Yeah. No, listen, this was a great conversation. Thanks for staying so long. We literally said we were talking right before you jumped on, and I was like, "Listen, dude, I can't do another 2.5 hour podcast." Like, and here we are, 3 hours in, and
I feel like
well, listen, a great conversation, and 100%. There are a ton of issues. You ever see anything you feel like you want to come on, have a discussion, let us know. We'll definitely love to have you on. We wish you luck, and we appreciate you being honest and presenting your platform. Yeah, I agree. I see a ton of clowns out there, bro. Send in the clowns. You got any last words before we get out of here?
I want to say that I wish I got to, because I was focusing on our conversation, I didn't get to really look at the comments and see what people said. I wish I could have, because I love addressing things directly and addressing people directly. I'm not somebody who like shies away from that. So I wish I had an opportunity to do that, but I will open it up that if anybody has a question for me or something that I didn't speak about and you feel like it's something worth talking about, send it over and I'd love to talk about it or post about it or whatever. And I do want to say this, since it is since you guys are former police officers, that, some of my earliest supporters, and people don't believe this when I say some of my earliest supporters of my campaigns were police officers, former police officers that felt like, current and former police officers that felt like we need new blood and we need young blood and people that think outside the box. And I was honestly floored. They would come to my events, and there's photos of this out there that come to my events and support. And that meant a lot to me because it meant that we're bringing different people from the community all together. And I do want to say that I'm thankful. I didn't get to share this. I wanted to share this earlier, but the precinct and nobody's perfect, nothing's perfect, but the precinct in my where my gallery is, there's been a lot of crazy things that have happened where folks have targeted me, and in a lot of instances they've been very open and responsive. In fact, one time people say, "Oh, the cops don't solve crime." There was one time recently where my store was broken into, and a man came in the middle of the night, broke in, vandalized, and all this stuff. I felt like it was a hate crime, but it was what it was, and he stole pretty much all the tech, all the computers and speakers that we had, tens of $1,000s worth of equipment. And the cops found my computer, which had a lot of like data in it. It was a nice Mac desktop computer, probably worth like $1,000. And they found that and got it back to me. I've had a bunch of stuff stolen in the city. I've never got it back. So I want to highlight that positivity and something that is just something that happened in real time in my life. And yeah, that's something that's great that's happened that the police department has done, and I appreciate all the hard work that folks done, and I have a lot of love for them. And again, my issue is been more so with the department, but as far as the average person, the average cop, they're a person just trying to make ends meet and do something for the community and for their family. And so for me, I really want to highlight that, elevate that, show love to that, and find out how we can have more of that happening and not suppress that. So yeah.
Paperboy Prince running for New York City Mayor 2025. Outstanding interview. Thank you so much for being here. In 30 seconds or less, I got one question for you because of all you said about the police department. You said new blood, and then we'll let you get out of here. It's been 3 hours. Thank you so much. In 30 seconds or less, who's your police commissioner? Your New York City Mayor 2025. Go.
You know what? Because we need such a shift, I would lead the love team. I would help lead the love team, and I feel like I would be a great motivator in that regard. But what I would do is and I wanted to do this ever since I first ran for office, but I would want to talk to every single police officer. It might take a year, it might take 2 years, but I would want to talk at least for 5 minutes to every single police officer.
This comes from Rob Lukash, by the way, this question. Our finest Unfiltered family. Great question, by the way. He was the chief so great question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Shout out to the chief. Much love. And yeah, so my answer to that question is, again, I like to put the people first. So I really would want feedback from the rank and file on who they feel is someone who should be in that position, more so than it being some type of political statement. Because a lot of times when you see the folks that are there, they're there as a political statement to say, oh, we have this person leading the police department, instead of them actually necessarily being the best person for the job or someone that can get the most out of the rank and file of the police department. So that's kind of my thought on that. It's really leaning on the folks that are a part of it to help find the best person for that position.
All right, awesome, people. All right, so 17:05 today or 5:05 p.m. Check out the Executive Perspective. They got a great show coming at you. They're going to be talking about the two faces of Andrew Cuomo. So that should be a pretty interesting show. So check that out. We're looking forward to that. Tomorrow, you got the Sal Greco show coming on at 12:05. Myself, Eric, will be back at 08:05 on Friday. We're going to have Tremel Thompson. He just put out a viral video about cops using MTA break rooms. And immediately after that, the NYPD had said that cops can no longer use break rooms in MTA facilities. So there's a little war brewing there between the MTA and the NYPD. We want to kind of get that out there and see where Tremel's head was at. So he should be joining us Friday, 08:05. So check that out. And yeah, Paperboy Prince, dude, it was honestly awesome. Keep in touch. Let's play that basketball game. I want to come check out the Love Gallery. Great, let's do this again. Let's do this again.
Let's play the basketball game. I would say take all the time you need to practice because I want you to be ready.
I just gotta get my wind up, bro. It's not the practice. I just gotta get the old man wind up. That's it.
Okay, perfect. So we do that and we'll be ready. And again, thank you guys so much. This was super dope. I like to say I think this is gonna be the best. I hope all of the other candidate interviews you do go amazing and are amazing and very informative. But I think that, in my opinion, this is going to be one of the best ones. It's going to be a legendary one and classic one. And I feel like this is probably the best juxtaposition of different voices and opinions and experience and all of that. And just a real raw conversation. So thank you guys so much. Much love. Paper. Yeah. It's our time. One love.
Thank you. 3 hours.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.